everyone, and welcome along to the Popture podcast, where you are tuning in for part 2 of every film that we watched in 2023. We being myself, AJ, my best friend, Richard.
Hello.
And my Disney villain, Jeremy. I've said this before, but I've always liked to think of Jeremy as the villain of the podcast.
I'm surrounded by idiots.
Which is not something I say without affection by any means. So,
it's not something I say lightly.
Yeah, so if you haven't listened to part 1, feel free to. Your life? We're basically just going through every movie that we saw in 2023 and maybe saying if we thought it was good, if we thought it was bad. We've yet to crown anything, I've noticed. We've yet to say, this is my most disappointing, or this is my favourite. But that is all about to change, boys, because we're about to talk about what I think is probably my most disappointing film of 2023.
Wow. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. So, Barbie, you guys. So
no!
We're talking about Mission: Impossible hyphen Dead Reckoning dash, yeah. Mission: Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Which is now,
they've now said, like, and they did this too late, and I was saying this since the titles got announced, they've said that Part 2 is not going to be called Dead Reckoning Part 2 now.
Wow.
Which hopefully means they'll remove Part 1 from the title retroactively. Imagine if they didn't. Imagine if this was stayed as Part 1 for years. This is probably going to be what's happened.
It's Richard here in the edit booth. They did change it, AJ, so there you go.
But that's something I was so angry that they were giving it a Part 1 when it's already like a title that's full of qualifiers.
Yeah,
there's colons in this shit. There's hyphens in this shit. You don't need Part 1.
Yeah.
Also, it's Mission Impossible, which like they all just sort of roll on after another with an unspecified time in between.
Yeah.
If James Bond can do Casino Royale and then Quantum of Solace directly following on from one another, bloody Mission Impossible can do the same. Get over yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, get over yourself, Tom Cruise.
Famously, he can't.
Savior of cinema.
So, yeah, I mean, this film, I had no real qualms with. I thought it was more of the same of the Mission Impossible that I've come to know and love. The McHugh and Cruise collaboration that long may it continue and save cinema.
If this was part 6, I don't think I would have as big an issue of it. But Mission Impossible Fallout is so fucking good.
It's fucking amazing.
That going into Dead Reckoning, my expectations were set there, and I just thought this was fairly average, fairly middling, and at times I even thought it was pretty bad. Like, I thought that what are they? Who is it? Who's it?
Atwell?
Benji.
Oh.
No, Haley Atwell's great in it, but Benji, Simon Pegg and is it
Ving Rhames?
Ving Rhames. They shouldn't have been in this movie. I thought they contributed nothing to the film. They're just there for like really shoddily written exposition scenes that I thought were just really tanked the film. There's a bit where Simon Pegg's character Benji has to disarm a bomb in an airport, and one of the questions he has to answer is like, what's the most important thing to you? And the answer is, my friends. And I thought that was so fucking lame. Like, these characters shouldn't talk about how they're friends with each other. Yeah. Like, the world is at stake.
The world is their friend.
It's not fucking How I Met Your Mother. It's Mission Impossible. It's not Friends, I should have said. You know what I mean? Like, it just felt needlessly saccharine for a franchise that doesn't do that kind of thing.
Quite
especially for the first set piece of the movie. Like, you don't get them, like, expressing their love for one another in case the world's going to end in the first challenge that they face in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And also the main villain... The main villain is an AI, an artificial intelligence, and I just thought it was, again, so stupid, so much less interesting.
What was it called again? The something?
Entity.
It was called The entity.
Ooh, the entity. Fucking bullshit. It's so bad.
Also, it's an interesting thing about how, like, at the start, they're like, oh, there's these keys, but we don't know what they unlock. But the opening of the film shows us. So, like, it's one of those interesting, like, you know, showing the audience stuff that the characters don't know, but because they don't figure out, in the course of the entire film, in part one, they don't figure out the thing that we've been told in the opening scene.
Yeah, right. And I just thought an AI villain was very... And specifically the way they did it, the way that it actually started talking to them and, like, imitating others' voices. I hate to say it about a franchise I have a lot of respect for. It felt very Marvel. Like, it felt very Ultron.
Wow.
And, like, it felt
also
sillier
felt like
than the reality of the universe.
Yeah, it felt like a return to the Mission Impossible 2 kind of feel of, like, this is cheesy, schlocky, like, early 2000s TV show that's been turned into like a trying to be prestige action movie, that kind of thing, rather than the kind of like, holy crap, this is real kind of feeling of, you know, the Christopher McQuarrie films that have been so far.
Yeah, and look, I think Henry Cavill in Mission Impossible Fallout, an impeccable villain, not underrated, not in the sense that no one praised him, but like he's got to be one of the best villains of the last decade, I think.
Wow.
When I think about Fallout, I think about Henry Cavill, not Tom Cruise.
And his moustache.
And his arms.
Reloading his arms. And the bit where, in the final battle between them, where he climbs up the mountain and his, like, perfect face has been scarred from the helicopter fight. It's so good. It's so good.
The fucking his Looney Tunes death, where, like, the hook rips his face back.
Oh,
so good.
Fucking awesome. Such a great chess game of characters, I thought. And it's just like none of that is even done in Dead Reckoning. And I guess, let me be clear. I gave this 3 stars out of 5, right? Like, it is good. It's not the worst Mission Impossible film. I'd probably put it maybe before 1 and 2. I'd rank it higher than 1 and 2, but maybe it's maybe even with 3, revealing my ranking there, which I know is maybe not the most conventional one, but like I just think like it didn't do anything really for me, and I was so put off by the dialogue at the start with Benji and what's his name? Luther?
Yeah.
That it set me off on a wrong course the whole movie, because I was just thinking about how bad those characters were integrated into the film. And also, I'll say it, the big set piece of this one, Tom Cruise driving a motorbike off a cliff.
Oh, boring as hell.
Boring.
And like, if I hadn't actually seen the video of, like, you know, the YouTube video, which they put everywhere of like, oh my gosh, look at him doing it. And it's like, he really did that. It's like, yeah, it's a pretty amazing setup with that massive ramp on scaffolding with the, you know, the wooden and all this sort of stuff. But it's also like, I don't know, showing you the behind the scenes clunkiness and like showing you him actually doing it on YouTube means that when you see it in the movie and all like the ramp has been taken away by CGI and replaced by mountain, it just makes it feel like a sort of a less good version of the stunt you've already seen.
Well, this is the thing with that. It's like, because the ground in that scene is CGI, it is like the marketing went over the top telling you, no, he actually did this, because otherwise it's not impressive. Whereas like compare it to the set pieces like Rogue Nation,
Halo jump.
And when he
the
goes
fucking Halo jump in Fallout?
The Burj Khalifa.
Yeah, when he goes
the
underwater for like 6 minutes.
And he holds on to the outside of the plane.
Hold the plane, yeah. It's all that all felt a lot more like. Yeah.
I'll even go as far as to say that those behind the scenes featurettes more impressive to me than the shot in the film where he does it. Like I'm such a hater. It's annoying to. Mission Impossible, I think, is one of the most consistent franchises out there, and a rare example of a franchise that's like better in the back half than it is in the front half. And to see people be like, "It's the best one yet," or "Yes, cinema is so back." I'm like, this is such a clear step down. It's McQuarrie's. it's Christopher McQuarrie's worst film in the series so far, I think. Like, I don't know.
I mean, the thing is, I will say, I bloody enjoyed it. Like, I left the cinema, had a great time. Rebecca Ferguson in this film, so good. She was amazing. Like every scene she was in, fully commanded the scene. I think it was Hayley Atwell who was the
she's great.
Couldn't stand her. I thought she was the worst part of the film.
Are you being serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
I wasn't. Yeah, like she felt very like interchangeable. Like Rebecca Ferguson. I think having her in there, like she had been brought in as kind of like the new Mission Impossible girl, kind of a few movies back or whatever, and then she really has a presence. And then Hayley Atwell could have been one of 15 different actresses. And
it's just fine. Like how she keeps on screwing over Ethan. Then he's like, I gotta keep. And I just that whole storyline of the two of them, it infuriated me.
Yes, and like just this and the weird sexless way that Ethan Hunt kind of like gloms onto a new woman who is like his sexless girlfriend is just it's just weird. Especially as he gets older, it becomes like it moves from kind of being this sort of like white knight kind of thing to like being this weird paternalistic thing where it's just like, I'm your daddy now.
Let's unpack this, because Tom Cruise is one of these actors where, like, at some point in the last 15 years, they just stopped doing romantic subplots with him in his movies because people felt uncomfortable because, he's pretty weird with the woman in his real life. So I guess people just didn't want to see him. And when he did have a romantic interest in a film, it was either, like, received kind of poorly, like in The Mummy, or it's like he's married, like in the previous Mission Impossible, so it like makes him safe to be around because he's married. But if this movie was made 20 years ago, Tom Cruise and Hayley Atwell would get it on.
They'd be fucking the whole time.
They'd be fucking the whole time. And I think it's so interesting because I think sexless is such a good word to describe modern Tom Cruise, Jeremy. And what I think is really interesting is that there's this scene in this movie where they're handcuffed together and they get into a little yellow Mini Cooper to drive around. And there is, I didn't see anyone else talk about this, but there is a kinkiness to this scene that I could not stop thinking about it, because if you were to just see a screenshot or not have the context of the scene, it looks like Hayley Atwell is giving him a little road action, a little road hand job.
Yeah, and they're crawling all over each other in the car, like they're moving around this tiny, tiny space. And
yeah, it should be a steamy scene, but it's Tom Cruise, so it's not.
This is a beat that was taken from Pierce Brosnan's World Is Not Enough. Tomorrow Never Dies, sorry. With won the Best Actress award last year.
Michelle Yeoh.
Michelle Yeoh, yeah. She was that Michelle Yeoh?
Correct.
Yeah. And they're on, but it's a motorbike instead of a tiny car. And they they have to sort of, and she's kind of straddling him, and it's very much played like as
it's sexy. We can say it. It's okay to be sexy. But this is what Tom Cruise, this is what Mission Impossible, like, I'm not even sure I wanted it to be sexy. I'm just saying it evoked imagery of people getting hand jobs in cars. And it was interesting to me that the movie itself kind of doesn't want you to think about it. But, like, that's kind of what it looks like.
Psychically slapping you on the hand. Like, no, stop. Yeah. No, stop.
Yeah.
I mean, great. I have to say, great last scene. Like, the all the different train carriages. I was literally like, there was a visceral kind of action to it, and it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So the big movie-going day of the year, Barbenheimer. This is what cinema is back, baby. Greta Gerwig's Barbie, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer released on the same day. Let's talk about Barbie first. AJ,
doesn't it feel quaint to be talking about this now, in January of 2024?
Yeah, like,
remember Barbenheimer?
We're finally revealing our thoughts on these films that everyone's been talking about for 6 months. Barbie, good time at the movies.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. I think I have a couple of issues with so we talked about this on Patreon, and my thoughts in a nutshell are, like, ideologically great, cool message. I've heard a lot of, like, my feminist friends be like, it's a very basic feminist message, but that's fine. It's a mainstream film. What more do you want, right? Like, so ideologically, I think it's great. Plot machinations I'm a little bit weird on. I think the fact that Barbie becomes a human at the end is like something I feel she didn't desire throughout the film.
Well,
at least
it becomes Ken's film in the third act, and then like main Barbie, Margot Robbie's Barbie, is like sidelined for the third act, and then it's literally like, oh, we have to think of a character arc so we can wrap it up here.
Yeah. My favorite thing about the film, and the thing that has stuck with me so much since watching it, is I am just so impressed and enamored, and I love the idea of explaining the like pitfalls and inequality of our real world patriarchy or patriarchal society by going, let's flip it and see what that looks like. I think that's such an accessible way to teach what inequality looks like. And it's so funny that, like, obviously the men's rights activists were up in arms over this film for being so woke and stuff. But it's like, it's kind of like talking to you. Like, it's
pro-man, I think.
It's a pro-men. It's an empowering for men film and a feminist empowerment film that is like truly about like a statement on how we need to achieve equality through equity. So it's like a way of showing that in such a, I thought, a very soft, friendly way. Yeah. But these people on the internet have made up their mind. And
it's not like a hard-hitting movie like some people are making it out to be. But the thing because I got to see it like a day early, and then at work, everyone's like, oh my God, what was Barbie like? You have to tell me. And my thing was that it's like, it is such a funny movie. Go in expecting a funny movie. If you get more than that, great. But like, my thing coming out of Barbie is that I felt a little bit like empty, because I was like, I had hyped this movie up so much that I was like, this is just a really funny movie. It is not going to change your life. It is not going to make you a better person necessarily. It is not going to fix all of your problems. But the thing is, I think I thought it would. And so to just have a really funny movie with this great message and like gorgeous visuals and like auteur-driven blockbuster, like all these things I've been clamoring for.
Yeah, awesome.
It just didn't feel like enough at the time.
Well, but I think that it's not just your expectations. Like, that's what Greta Gerwig was talking to. Like, she was saying, like, the whole marketing of this film was that it was, this movie is, Barbie. It's more than just a Barbie movie. It's, really saying something. It's here to, make a statement. And it's just like, I feel like, and I'm going to steal from a YouTuber that I absolutely love called Makara Tours, who, in her review of it, she basically pointed out, and I completely agree with her, that essentially there are two storylines or 2 points that this movie wants to make, and it can kind of only really make one, and it tries to make both of them. And she thinks that the first one that was come up with was essentially the one that's the through line of where it ends, which is Barbie becoming a real woman, aging, and realizing that beauty is in every part of the human experience of what being a woman is, and I think those moments are the ones that land, and you sort of feel them when she's talking to the older woman at the bus stop, when she talks to the creator of Barbie, and like all those moments where it's just
I feel the opposite. I think these were the parts that didn't work for me. I agree with the message, but the execution.
And this is I'm going to make a point about the execution in a minute. But she was basically saying that feels like the original through line of the film, the message that the filmmaker wanted to make. And then essentially there was this other fun little thing about Ken that then took on a life of its own as they were making the film, and realized how unbelievably hilarious Ryan Gosling was with it all. And that felt like almost like a snowball that just gathered its own momentum, and then half or more of the movie became about this war between the Kens and the Barbies, and men and women, and patriarchy, sexism, all that. So, and I would say that from the very beginning, it's very clear that this movie wanted to make a point about patriarchy and sexism and the impact of Barbie on
totally. It's not even. This is in the text,
in the text. So I'm not saying that part of it was an add-on, but I do think that stuff, because it was the more sort of on the surface fun stuff, and it also played into what I think is the best part of the movie, which you've already identified, which is just the whole production of it, like the set, and everything to do with the way the movie looks is just untouchable. Like, it's so beautiful.
It would be so easy for a lesser director to not think about that.
Oh, and for it to just be, and also with, because essentially you've literally got the world's biggest wardrobe and, the world's biggest, architectural history in terms of all the Barbie dream houses and all the cars and everything. And you could literally just do a pastiche of it and for it to look cheap and plastic, but somehow Barbie Land feels well realized and like a real place. It's just that when you try to make both of those points at the same time, and also the weird thing about the Ken storyline is that instead of making the point in the way that the Barbies actually try to solve the problem of all the Kens, is that they then basically like, we're going to take back control, and then they actually do go and take back control. And
it should have been. They should have voted on a future together.
It's like, what are you saying? It's just the stupidest. It's the stupidest thing ever, because they identify the problem at the beginning of the movie and then they just go back to it. Like, it's bizarre. And then Will Ferrell and his whole storyline just felt like. And then I think, Richard, you sort of talked about the mechanics of things, like how exactly. What exactly is the mix between Barbie and the real world, and how is she both a Barbie and also a real person in our world, and how does the maker of Barbie still exist in an office in the building? Like it's like all these sort of fantastical, magical elements that sort of are both fantastical but also somehow mesh into the actual real world that we are living in, and they just go, we're just not going to figure out how that works.
I liked that. There's a line where they're like, oh, is Barbie Land like a parallel universe sort of? And they're all sort of like, yeah, whatever. I thought that was great. To not have to waste time telling me if Barbie Land is a parallel universe or a pocket dimension, or like, I didn't need to know that. Yeah. But I did think that the ghost of Ruth Handler it just didn't have any context. Like, why is there a ghost here? And she shows up again at the end. I didn't like that bit either.
I will say the one thing that, and this a lot of people have started talking about it now, but it's just like, it pissed me off so much when I saw the film, is the voiceover line where Barbie is crying and saying about how she doesn't feel beautiful anymore, and the Helen Mirren's voiceover says, note to the filmmakers, Margot Robbie is the wrong person to cast to make this point. To me, that completely undermines the entire point of the film, and especially that scene. A lot of people have said that it's like they're beating people to the joke. They're saying that, like, they said, I was watching it with my friend and they nudged me and said, they shouldn't have cast, and then the voiceover came on. But it's like, the whole point is that, like, society puts these standards on people that even someone who looks like Margot Robbie, who you could think has it all, can still feel inadequate. And it's such a gross line that's so antithetical.
But also, that's just, it doesn't feel groundbreaking. Like, this point has been made over and over and over again, and it's not like this is the first movie to actually come out and admit that there is actually more going on in people's lives than how they look. It's like, in one sense, I agree. It's very cool that the Barbie movie is saying this. There's some really cool stuff that the Barbie movie gets to say, and because it's Barbie and it's this like this IP that has had a chokehold on kind of a lot of what young girls grow up thinking about themselves and all this sort of stuff, and also, blah blah blah. But also, it's like a little too late.
You reckon Mattel has done too much damage? It's something I think about.
No. Sorry, I'm not talking about the it's too little. You can't make up for the damage. It's more just like, it's not enough of a statement. Like, if this movie came out in 1999, sure, it would be groundbreaking. But coming out in 2023 and saying that beauty is more than skin deep is like, okay.
But that's not the only message.
No, I know. But it's just,
I just want to point out at this point that, like, you're listening to this podcast and you've got three guys who are being like, Barbie wasn't perfect. And, like, I think that... And this is interesting because I appeared on one of our listeners, Dan, did a podcast watching Barbie every day for a week. And I was in the third or fourth episode, and it was sort of like it's now time to, look at some of the maybe little nitpicks and stuff. But, like, all the amazing things about Barbie, I feel like we kind of like take for granted, or like they're like a given. That it's like all the obviously great things about Barbie, yeah, of course. I'm so glad this film exists. That we got this, like,
it's a celebration.
The highest grossing film of the year is, like, a female director with, like, an unflinchingly female perspective, and
cool.
like this super, like, the world design, the production design, that's like so much care and so much love gone into it. And unfortunately, it seems like Hollywood's going to be like, more films based on toys then, but it's like people like this because it's a great idea, and it's a auteur driven, and
it's genuinely funny as well.
So funny.
That's the thing.
It's
like,
so fun.
I loved the I can't remember her actual name, but like the screwed up Barbie, and being played by oh my gosh, it's so, I mean, like, it was all sort of, you know, trailed in the trailer, but still, I loved
trailed.
That. Like,
good term, Jeremy. Did you make that up?
Maybe, I don't know.
I like that when a plot point is spoiled in the trailer, it's been trailed. I like it.
Yeah, I've that's been in my mind for several years now, and I think it may be the first time I've ever said it out loud. But, it was one of those things where I thought that the joke was all done and over with what we saw in the trailer, but everything that Kate McKinnon is such an amazing performer. So, like, of course, everything she says is hilarious. But yeah, I just loved how she kind of became like the ringleader of things that were going on back on in Barbie Land.
Yeah. What I think this movie reminds me of somewhat, and maybe this is coming from my film tutor background or whatever, but it reminds me a lot of when you're doing like 48 hours, or you're making a short film like in high school or university or whatever, and it's 4 a.m. and you're in the edit booth, you've lost your marbles, you're getting pretty silly, and you start like rewinding the footage so people are falling over and getting back up again, falling over again. And people, like, I've done that before and someone had to like leave the room because they were in hysterical fits of laughter just because they were so tired, right? And the line you said before where it's like Margot Robbie's a bad example to make this point, that feels like a symptom of that. It feels like they're in the edit booth.
They've got the 4 a.m. sillies.
They've got the 4 a.m. sillies. They're just throwing every single thing at the wall and letting it stick there, because wasn't there like a deleted scene that Greta Gerwig wrote? It was never filmed.
Oh,
it was like a fart competition or something like that.
Fart
like,
opera.
Yeah, fart opera, and it's like all this stuff is just, it's like the idea of the movie is just like, it's Barbie, do whatever the fuck you want, throw everything at the wall, and I kind of respect that, but some of it feels unfocused.
I'm so glad they got rid
because
of the fart opera.
Also, I'm gonna say it, lockdown fever. Like, this was made during lockdown, like the COVID lockdowns, right? And
totally,
so you've got Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig talking about what she's writing, and like you know, talking about the production.
Well,
he
was also writing it.
Yeah. So they're writing it together, and you can just tell, like, and so that's, I think, part of the charm of it, where the charm comes from, because it's just so. You can tell there's been focus really, really put on it. But I do think some of the craziness of like, oh, imagine, I can imagine probably comes from that as well.
I also, it's mentioning the pandemic as well, that like, not so much this movie, but there's a lot of movies, Knock at the Cabin is a great example of one, of like single location films that were born out of necessity. I think Saltburn, I would say, is another one, where it's like, you know, you can have everyone just go to this fucking mansion in the middle of nowhere and
true.
bubble it like that. But we got a lot of them at the end of last year as well, or the end of 2021, or 2022, sorry.
2022.
But yeah, I think here as well. So obviously, same day as Barbie, we have the other half of Barbenheimer, which is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, and it's interesting because like. When I'd finished both films, I saw Barbie a day earlier, and then I saw Oppenheimer. I put them both on sort of equal footing, but for like different reasons. But like Oppenheimer, I feel like has changed my life. Like, I've thought about Oppenheimer every single day since I saw it, and like,
it's your new Roman Empire.
It's I mean, I never thought about the Roman Empire. But yeah, like, especially the ending of that film is just like, it blew me away. And just like, it's a film, even in the days after I saw it, and now having, 6 months later, just that, like, the more time I've had with it, the more I appreciate it, the more I like about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I certainly think about the final scene, but that's probably about it. I liked the movie fine. I thought that the splitting it into two halves, I'm kind of like, oh, one of these halves is a lot more compelling to me than the other.
I think I would say it split it very clearly into like 3 rather than 2. Or do you mean like the black and white versus the color?
The black and white stuff.
Oh, yeah,
I found
so.
the in-color stuff to be more interesting than the black and white stuff. But
I think in terms of acts, it's like the first hour is like before the town is built. The second hour is like the town, and then the bomb drops almost exactly at the 2-hour mark, and then it's all the aftermath for an hour. And I quite liked how it was divided like that.
Yeah, look, I think I had a good time with it, but I also think that like it hasn't the only reason it's stuck with me is because it's probably going to win Best Picture, so people are still talking about it. And
I think my journey with it has been that I've become okay with it winning Best Picture if it's going to.
Nice. Jeremy, what do you think?
It was interesting because as it started, I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be a long movie. And it's not actually, when I think about it, because I was just sort of, going into it with the Oppenheimer of it all, Christopher Nolan, and then I was like, I've locked myself in for 3 hours of a movie about this guy who basically is going to do something we all know he did, and we all kind of know what happened. So like, how is this going to be enjoyable? And it was really enjoyable, and it was gripping. And like, I'm always amazed when a film has a sort of a culminating moment that everyone knows what that culminating moment is. There's no surprise. And it's a mark of a really good filmmaker when they can still make that suspenseful, and they can get you invested, and I think the payoff moment was beautiful. And I think the sound design of this film just is unbelievable. Like the sound design, unlike almost any other film that I've experienced, I just was in awe of how well chosen every single moment was. Like, I mean, certainly. I mean, if I was asked to watch any Chris Nolan movie again right now, Oppenheimer would be like probably 4th on the list, 3rd or 4th.
I've been desperate for an Oppenheimer rewatch, but when have I got a spare 3 hours?
Yeah. And so I think in terms of film craft, far and away, this movie is unbelievable. It's glorious, because essentially being able to create an action movie and a like the feeling and the suspense and the tension of a very tightly wound action film, basically using Cillian Murphy's face and what's going on inside of his head without telling us what's going on inside of his head. I mean, it's incredible. And so the subtlety of what's going on, but yet how clearly it is known what's going on is, I'm not really expressing myself very well, but it was
it's been a long
very
what the thing about Oppenheimer as well, like it did something that I've never seen a film do before, which is like, obviously, a lot was made about it shooting in IMAX and stuff. And like, normally you watch a movie that's shot for IMAX, and if you watch it actually like in an IMAX cinema, the aspect ratio changes every now and then. And I remember watching Nope, and it would be like this big scene and you think it's finished, but the aspect ratio is still IMAX. So you're like, well, something's going to happen. Or like a seemingly innocuous shot would start, but it was in IMAX. So you're like, okay, something's going to happen. But like Oppenheimer used IMAX not to like accentuate the scale. I mean, like obviously it did, but not just to accentuate scale or like action or anything like that. There were IMAX shots that were just like a close up of Cillian Murphy's face or something like that, and it's like they were using the what you get from IMAX, which is like such a crisp, gigantic picture, to heighten emotion, so you can see. And that's what like really accentuates how great Cillian Murphy's performance was, is that you're seeing every single like minute detail because it was up there on IMAX. And I think that the actual bomb detonation sequence, when that happened, I was like, that is the best scene Christopher Nolan's ever done. Like I think it's his best directing. And then the scene afterwards where he is like announcing like, hey, we had a successful detonation, but you can see the reality set in, and like he hears the screaming, the people, and I was like, well, that's the new best scene he's directed. Like, I think that it's Nolan's strongest work is in this film.
Yeah.
And a director that I was kind of getting sick of as well, and having like using what he's good at to for good again.
Yes. I thought it was interesting that there was a bit of like commentary around how this film didn't really focus or spotlight the true atrocities of what the bomb did. And I was just like, well, I think it was pretty horrifying. Like what, that his reaction and his, like you say in that film, in that moment in the film where, everyone's kind of pounding on the, and screaming and all that sort of stuff, and he sees the sort of the carcass and ash. I mean, all of that, because the whole film is around his experience, right? Like, centers on him as a character.
The script is written in first person as well.
Yeah, it would have been so freaking bizarre to suddenly cut away to like, shots of what actually happened on the ground. But the true horror of what was going on, I don't think I felt physically ill, but again, I would say also actually read some history, people. Like, it's like, it's not this film's job to educate you.
Well, there's a thing that like Spike Lee said, like, oh, I loved the film, but I would have shown the Japanese people, and someone asked Christopher Nolan about that. And he was like, we're different filmmakers. We have different opinions about these things. What I'm focusing on is that, Spike Lee's this director that I look up to, and he's a incredible filmmaker. He said he loved the film. That's the bit I'm focusing on. Like, we can disagree on other parts. Like, sure, fine.
Yeah.
I love that bit where they're talking about where they're going to bomb, and they don't bomb one of the cities because one of the guys went there on holiday a couple of years before. It's such a chilling line.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, and that wasn't scripted, and the actor like just picked it up in his research about the character, and it's not at all certain as to whether or not that character actually did make that call. He just had visited there.
Yeah.
Something you briefly moving on now from Oppenheimer, but something you briefly reminded me there of, Jeremy, a couple of films that we've passed by but didn't talk about, is that like you said, talking about how, building suspense in a film where you know what's going to happen. I was actually talking to Ben Affleck about this a few months ago.
I was wondering where you were going with this.
But this year, a lot of people, this is like the year of the corporate biopic, because we had like the Tetris movie, there was a Beanie Babies movie, but there was Blackberry, which AJ and I both saw, and then Air, which I saw as well, about the getting Michael Jordan to sign on to the Air Jordans. And one of the questions when I was speaking to Ben Affleck for the film was that, like, how do you building tension in a movie where everyone knows the outcome, and he was like, I would argue the outcome of every film in a sense, that like he sort of said that like films have a formula, and like there's a certain predictability to a lot of cinema, and people are still able to do that, but like no, Air was a fun film. It's like the dad movie of the year, people are calling it, and yeah, it's just a fun movie with some good performances. People like, this is the new Jerry Maguire. It's the greatest sports film of all time. It's not, but it's good fun. And then Blackberry, I watched on a plane. Again, some really good moments in it. They've now added some scenes back into it that were deleted, and they made it into a miniseries. But great performance from Glenn Howerton, and then the film around it's not
I
bad.
saw Blackberry because I got sent a screener for it. It was the first screener I've ever been sent, and I very excitedly watched it and logged it as a 3-star film. Maybe 3.5.
So one film that this is, and you and I think feel similarly about this, but the highest rated horror film of the year on Letterboxd was Talk to Me. Made by these two Australian guys who used to have a YouTube channel called Raka Raka, and it's a horror movie about a hand that you could talk to demons and get possessed and stuff.
It's this year's elevated horror that completely farts its landing and ends up having you go away with like a problematic message, which is like, I was talking to my coworkers about this at Letterboxd today because I just made a video that's like a screening reaction to a film coming out called The Shade, and the way everyone was talking, all these people had just seen a preview screening of The Shade, they're like, oh, it's like The Babadook, it's like It Follows, it's like Talk to Me, and it's like, there have been 5 good elevated horrors, I reckon. Or 5 ones that have done it properly. I reckon it's It Follows, The Babadook, Get Out, Hereditary, and maybe Midsommar if you count those 2. And then you've got ones like Talk to Me or Smile or
The Boogeyman.
Lights Out. I haven't seen The Boogeyman, but they're these films that want to be called elevated horrors as well, but they don't consider the message that is at the heart, because all of these movies are about grief. Ugh, it's getting so like it's becoming like a trope.
Yeah,
now,
there was like my
like,
review on the news of Boogeyman was like, if you've seen a film where like the monster is a metaphor for grief, like if you haven't seen one of those, this will blow your mind. If you have, this is like all of them.
Yeah, and like I haven't seen The Shade, so not to throw shade at The Shade. A movie coming out in 2024, maybe my first 2024 review.
I mean, it's a 2023 film according to IMDb.
Oh fuck! Damn, I'll have to rank it with the 2023. But I don't know. I was sort of just making fun of it because it's like, oh, where have I heard this 1,000 times? Yeah. And what sucks about Talk to Me is that those 2 guys, those directors, I edited a video where they had a long form interview with George Miller of Mad Max. And it was so fun, and they're such fun guys. And as a person who's kind of got aspirations to
trying
be like
to graduate from YouTube
to be a filmmaker and a film director, like I should be supporting films like this. I should be like studying their career. But it's like I liked Talk to Me up to a point. And then the ending kind of insinuates you should kill yourself.
Well, it's like...
And that's what these movies do. That's what these movies do.
It's like, it's so good in so many ways. And like, it's like, I love the first 75% of it. And then I love the last 1% of it.
The last scene is a great little punchline to the concept. But I don't think it fits the narrative. Just, you know what, though? Change the character journey then, if you want that ending.
Yeah.
Like, don't throw away your good ending because it doesn't quite gel with the message you're sending. Change the message. I think that would be more
I get, and I like that it's supposed to be like a tragic tale. But yeah, just it just lost me towards the end. The Marvels, I'm the only one that saw.
This is a big deal for me. This is the first MCU film that I just missed.
Yeah.
Since, like, Phase 2.
Yeah. So we've talked before about how, like, it's frankly despicable to give to make your films diverse after people have stopped caring about them.
Yeah.
And it's like, and The Marvels is a great example of that, because it's like, this was the lowest opening for a Marvel movie ever, like worse than The Incredible Hulk, I think. And it's like, this is a super fun film, and you know, fixes a lot of the problems people had with Captain Marvel, and like the core trio, which is like,
fixes a lot of the problems people have with Captain Marvel, so they turn her into a man in the movie.
Yeah, well, she smiles more, so she looks a lot prettier. But like, you know, that it's like you've got Captain Marvel, who was like your first female superhero with their own film. She teams up with like a black woman and a Muslim teenager, and the core trio in the film are so much fun, and like the best part of the film. But then it's like you have a forgettable villain. You end up just going, oh, here's a cameo at the end of it.
Who's the cameo at the end this time?
I think I might have already told you, but like spoilers for the Marvels. So it ends with like, oh, there's a tear in the space-time continuum. You have to close it from the other side. And Tiana Paris's character, who the whole time they're like, we need to come up with a name for you. And in the comics, I think she's called Photon. And then the film ends before they name her. But she ends up going through this thing, ending up in a parallel universe, and then she wakes up and she's being tended to by Kelsey Grammer's beast.
God. Fuck that, man. Fuck it. This shit sucks! I don't want to see another film about multiverses. I don't want to see another film about parallel dimensions. I'm sick of this shit!
Welcome, AJ. Welcome to my world.
But no, the Marvels, it didn't deserve the hate that it got. It's a very fun movie with like a lot of great humor and a really fun core trio. But forgettable villain and stuff. Another film that I liked more than the Marvels, but the came out was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem.
I wanted to see this so bad. I just haven't gotten around
this
to it.
So I'm on the record as not really liking the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In fact, I kind of hate them. This film fucking rocks. It's so good. Like,
yeah, cool.
It's been a great year for animation. Yeah, like, it's one of these things where it's like, it sucks that this isn't even really in the conversation for like Oscar, because it would either be Spider-Verse or Boy and the Heron. But it's like, oh my god, just like the art style is so great that it's if Spider-Verse is like, how do we make a comic book come to life? This is like, how do we make a kid's doodle come to life? Or like, a
kid's doodle.
Yeah, I felt that when I said it. But it's like, it looks like, sketchbook sort of thing. And it's like, it's got such a fun storyline. The teenagers actually the Teenage Mutant Turtles actually feel like teenagers for the first time, but they're actually played by teenagers for the first time. And they have them, because I think Seth Rogen said that, like, when he was doing The Lion King, him and Billy Eichner and Donald Glover would actually record their lines together so they could bounce off each other. And so he let them do that. They got them all just sitting around a table together and would just riff on each other and shit. And they've got such a great relationship. It's so fun. The movie looks amazing, and it's like, oh, I wish there weren't better films than this year, because it feels like it slipped under the radar a little bit. But yeah, a lot of fun. Meg 2: The Trench, terrible.
Do you really need to talk about
terrible film?
Meg 2:
Terrible
The Trench?
film. Haunted Mansion.
Do you really need to talk about Haunted Mansion?
Almost worse than Meg 2: The Trench. Haunted Mansion, man. Well, fuck, what a boring film. Gran Turismo.
Do you really need to talk about Gran Turismo?
Gran Turismo is actually pretty decent. It's not bad.
Where does it rank in Neil Blomkamp's filmography?
Probably second.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I should check it out.
Yeah, it's like... yeah, I was going to say it doesn't feel like a Blomkamp film, but it's like there is enough visually interesting stuff in it that it kind of works. The main guy is Farley from Saltburn.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, at the end of Saltburn, I was like, when the credits came, I was like, I recognize that name. I was like, because I've seen Gran Turismo. Also, his mum is played by Jerry Halliwell, just randomly.
What?
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah,
You can't just cast Jerry Halliwell as a character. It's gotta be like a cameo or like a joke in some way.
Yeah. But yeah, also in August we had...
Do you know what it'll be? I bet she's a massive fan of the game.
Or her kids are or something.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, get in the Gran Turismo movie, Mum. And she's like, fine, I'll exercise my clout for the first time in 30 years and get in the Gran Turismo movie.
Yeah. I like how, like, 30 years ago, she was, like, at the height of her fame in Spice Girls. Or, like, not even yet. And so it's, like, the idea that she didn't exercise her clout during her entire run of the Spice Girls.
You know the point I'm making.
But yeah, what AJ called the return to form for the sex comedy Bottoms.
Totally. Oh my gosh. So Rich and I have both seen this, and I'm looking at our spreadsheet, and Jeremy's tick is once again not there, and there's no movie on this list I'm more heartbroken that Jeremy hasn't seen than Bottoms. Because Jeremy, when we first started becoming friends, we would watch movies that were like on the dying last gasp of like the studio comedy, right? Like I feel like we watched like Our Idiot Brother and things like that. This was back in Christchurch in like 2012. We would watch like these kinds of movies, and then they went away for a while, and now they are back and they're better than ever, or at least this one is. There is a video essay in me about the fact that everyone touted No Hard Feelings as the triumphant return, but Bottoms is the evolution of the teen sex comedy, I think. Bottoms is so fucking funny. It's so good. It's so horny and like unabashedly so. But like I think because it's like directed by a woman and about like queer women, it's like a fresh and not problematic take on it where it's so good and it's so
fine
funny.
If women manipulate people to get laid.
Well, I mean, the movie itself criticizes that as well, but my point is more that like this takes the like ashes of American Pie and goes, we liked the vibe of these movies,
and it fucks them.
We liked when
Saltburn style.
We liked when you'd go to the video store and there were all these like horny looking movies on the shelves. We don't get them anymore, so like the director went in to make that, to make I think I edited an interview with Emma Seligman, I think her name is. She said basically she made the movie that she would have wanted to see when she was a teenager, and so as I say, like it's got the DNA of American Pie and Eurotrip and shit in there, but it builds on it and actually is intelligent and smart and like thoughtful with it, and like it's not I guess it's woke in a sense, but it's like it's the problematic.
There's women in it.
Yeah, exactly. The problematic elements of it are like part of the text in this case, and beyond that, it is also just fucking hysterical. It is so funny. I don't remember the last time I laughed so hard in a movie, and I gave it 5 stars, and that's very. And
AJ, you called me when you finished it, and you were just. I
called Richard up, and I was like, "Hey, I know we recommend stuff to each other a lot, and then never follow up on it
as a joke."
As a joke, we deprive each other of ourselves of like good media because the other recommended it.
Yeah.
But like, this is just the like. This is, we talked about Fist Fight earlier. This has very similar ideas to what's so good about the final scene of Fist Fight. Fuck, it's good. I think this is funny.
Another movie that AJ overhyped to hurt my feelings.
Oh, you didn't like it?
No, I did. I just think you may be overhyped.
Damn, I was trying to hurt your feelings. Anyway, Jeremy, the takeaway is you should watch. I think you'd fucking love it, man.
Yeah, I wish I'd gone to see this in a cinema because I think it either had no cinematic run here or very limited.
Yeah, it didn't.
But yeah, so I just watched it at home and was kind of like, yeah, it was pretty good. Like I didn't get the hysterics that you got from it. I mean, it's a very funny movie, but I don't think I actually laughed that much at it.
Damn.
It's been a long time since I've had a proper laugh at a movie.
Honestly, maybe get a couple friends around and watch it. It's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
It's just, it's silly and exciting and fun. It's about a couple of lesbians in high school who want to bang the cheerleaders, so they start a fight club. It's great.
Good times.
It's funny. Like it's on Amazon Prime. So looking for this film, I went on to Amazon Prime and I was like, typed in Bottoms, and it was like, I don't know what you want, dude. Like, okay. And then so I went into like the Google Chrome homepage, search Bottoms, and it was like, oh, that's on Amazon Prime. I'll pull it up for you. Fucking annoying.
Weird.
So what for a while was my top film of the year, and I still maybe think is one of my favorite films of the year, is Past Lives, which is very simply, it's about a love triangle, but it's a lot more sort of complex than that. Beautiful film.
In the same way that I feel like Jeremy would find Bottoms hilarious, I feel like you would find Past Lives breathtaking, Jeremy.
Yeah.
You should check that. You should check out Past Lives. It's so good.
Yeah, I have it queued.
Yeah.
I I was ready to go, and then
we had to start this fucking podcast.
No, I prioritized watching Fast X.
Well, I will say that I was incredibly sleepy, and I was sitting in a very dark cinema and spent most of the movie my eyes glazed over and just sort of phasing. What I would do for a bit of this movie was I would refocus my eyes to read the subtitles, because a lot of it's in is it Korean?
Korean.
Yeah, a lot of it's in Korean, so I would like refocus to read the subtitles and then just let my eyes fall away again. It was a hellish way to watch the film. I don't recommend it.
Yeah, no, I was so disappointed when you gave this 4 stars.
Well, I'll say this. I have thought about this movie a lot since I fell asleep watching. Well, I didn't actually fall asleep, but I got very close to it.
Shut up, I wasn't sleeping.
So, like, if that's like, when I first saw it, I was like, oh yeah. And as I've thought about it, it's like crept on me, and like such an elegantly small story. You know what I mean? Like
beautiful.
It's so intimate, and like the character changes in it are like infinitesimal, but that's sort of what's so beautiful about it.
Isn't it amazing when you see on screen something that is art and you go like, what is happening here is so close to the most beautiful things that can happen in real life, and yet these people are just acting, and these words were written down, and this isn't actually real life. But this is like, it's portraying the most beautiful, or the most sort of heart-wrenching, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, it's portraying a part of the human experience that is so extremely, like, either exquisite or horrifying or whatever, that it's moving me and changing me as a person. And what's really hard about that is when something like that as a film is like a tiny little treasure box. Like, what I'm hearing from you guys is that, like, it's a small personal film that's like it's not swinging for the fences, it's not doing anything massive, but actually in the small shifts it actually is doing something massive. And it's really sad to me that, like, often those movies are really overlooked because, well, there's, you know, not much money changing hands in those films, because no one expects them to do big money at the box office or anything, and they don't get seen by as many people, and so they don't necessarily get rewarded at the you know, awards time as much, and so then they don't get seen. But yeah,
this is going to get nominated in a dozen categories at the Oscars.
Oh no, it has been, but I just think there's so many films like this. But like, this doesn't have a chance against Oppenheimer. You know, like, it doesn't have a chance against sort of the other stuff that's going on in the Oscars this year. And so
I will say that, like, because so this was the last film I reviewed for One News, and the director Celine Song came to New Zealand for screenings of it, and I had like a half-hour sit-down interview with her, and it was so good. She was so lovely. And one of the sort of things I was talking to her about is that it's like, because of what this film is, that it's like a childhood sweetheart, and then they grow apart, reconnect, and then she goes off and marries a different guy, but there's always that kind of like what could have been. That it's like, there is 100 lesser versions of this film where, like, the guys are Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, and they are just and they're just fighting over it. And she was sort of saying that it's like, there's something really compelling about adults acting like adults, and the whole thing of the film is that it's like these 3 people who love, like, these 2 guys that love this woman so much in different ways and truly want her to be happy, and neither guy is the villain. Like, you're introduced to one earlier, so you're probably more likely to side with him, but like, everyone in the situation is mature, and it makes it so much more complicated.
Yeah, cool. That's a great way to put it.
So a film that I had a few hours to kill when I was in Sheffield, and it was tossing up between a few different movies, but ended up going to A Haunting in Venice, the latest.
Which is the first time in these 2 episodes that it's you and Jeremy have seen it, but I haven't.
Yeah.
So let me sit back and eat my dried chickpeas.
I love dried chickpeas, man.
These taste fucking crazy.
What flavor are they?
Sour cream and chives.
Chana cracker. They don't have a flavour.
Can I see the packet?
They're just spiced.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Love that. Anyway, Haunting in Venice. Haunting in Venice is like... It's insane that the same person made Death on the Nile. Death on the Nile was so fucking seriously bad that like this was marketed as like it was because I saw people saying online. I mean, I didn't really follow the marketing, but they were like, "It's crazy that people don't know this is the third in a trilogy." Like people are like, "Oh, that Michelle Yeoh ghost movie, that looks cool."
Yeah, and it's so the trailer so clearly leans into like this is a horror movie.
Yeah. But it's
and it really isn't.
No, it's oh god, it's so much better than Death on the Nile though. But it's interesting that it's like this is the same filmmaker that made Belfast making this film. It's visually exciting and interesting, and I can't remember, to be honest, I can't remember much of the actual mystery, but like it's it's just such a better made film.
I think it's in a more compelling location. I think the Nile lends itself to kind of cliche, like visual cliche. It's hard to do something that's like that feels kind of like filled with. I mean, I don't know. Actually, maybe I'm being too generous. Like the Death on the Nile felt like it was plastic in every way. Like it was just all CGI, plastic, shiny horrendousness, and it. You know, for something that was purporting to be a period film, like felt so harshly modern, it was ridiculous. This very much felt like embedded in its context. Like Venice, very interesting place to set a film. The actual house that it was set in. I think that it was weird having a cast that was sort of like a third of the cast were quite famous people, and then the rest of the cast were just absolute nobodies. And basically, like you've got Murder on the Orient Express, which sort of was the high watermark of all the famous people, and then Death on the Nile, kind of like the next level down, and then this one. Although Michelle Yeoh, like I mean, what a year to get her in your film. I mean, but like Tina Fey is definitely a tier down from Michelle Yeoh in terms of film. Although Tina Fey was actually quite good in this, I thought. I just think there are diminishing returns on this whole revival of the whodunit. Yeah. Like especially after Knives Out, you kind of go, ugh, like you're going to have to do something pretty special. I did think that it was, like you say, definitely better than Death on the Nile. Possibly even better than the remake of Murder on the Orient Express. The classic scene where he sort of explains how he knows everything that happened. I think there were too many jumps in kind of his like, oh yes, and he figured that out because of this.
Which is
and
maybe
it's like,
more of a problem with Agatha Christie.
Yes, 100%. But I mean, I haven't read the book, so I don't know what she offered. But like, it just very much did seem like he saw one thing under a bed and then somehow knew whole conversations that characters had without any evidence.
Because this was under the bed, I can figure this out.
But I mean, honestly, it's worth the price of admission just for the final shot of him talking on the rooftop of the sort of location in Venice he's in, and there's a massive shot. It's so gorgeous. Yeah. So yeah, they had a lot of fun there.
All right, so up next after Haunting in Venice, we've got Dumb Money. And I just want to say, I cannot keep up this charade any longer, guys. We tried to pretend like nothing changed, but it has been a week since we discussed A Haunting in Venice. And now I didn't want to lie to the fans. I felt like I was lying to myself if I just rolled straight on into Dumb Money without acknowledging the gigantic elephant in the room.
Well, you know, if this was a podcast that ever got anywhere close to like sponsorships and things, what a great place to put an ad in between the gap that we took in real life. But unfortunately, 8 years in, the better half of a decade we've been doing this, and we've only had one sponsor in that time, and they swiftly pulled any further sponsorships when I think we made them zero money.
I thought you were going to say 8 years in, and we still have yet to be able to finish one of these records in a decent amount of time.
That too. You could almost say that this sponsorship we got was rather dumb money for them, because we got given a payment for it, and then I worry that they got nothing out of it.
Oh, yeah.
I've never spoken to them again.
Yeah, well, so dumb money, and I'm glad we took the break when we did, because I know it's the kind of movie you guys would be like, do we really need to fucking talk about this? Only you've seen it, Richard. Who gives a shit? And,
I still feel exactly the same way, but okay.
Well, you can get fucked, Jeremy.
Yeah, but Jeremy, now at the start of a record, you have more patience to allow for it. At the end of a 3-hour record, if Richard wants to talk about a movie only he's seen, you and I would both be like, Richard, pause the off pod, Richard, we need to move on. Bro. But now it's fine.
So, yeah, dumb money. This is about the GameStop short squeeze that happened in January of 2021, and it's one of these things that I knew a little bit about, but not really a lot. I remember it happening, but it's such a fun movie, and just the way it's made, and it's one of those things that sort of made me think, is Craig Gillespie one of my favorite directors? Is he now one of my sure thing directors? Because his last few movies, Dumb Money, Cruella, I, Tonya, he also made Fright Night 2011. He directed a bunch of Pam and Tommy, the TV series, and it's just everything he does, I've in recent years anyway, I've enjoyed and has been a heck of a lot of fun. But the things I sort of want to say about this is it's got a great cast. You've got Paul Dano playing the what's the Keith Gill, and he goes by Total Fucking Value is his Reddit username, and he's the one that sort of started off this whole short squeeze. And it's he Paul Dano is an actor who he's a great actor, but I've never really loved him in anything, because I find him so off-putting and creepy. And he just feels like a really lived in real character in this. But the one thing that sort of I found super interesting, and because we talked a couple of years ago about pandemic movies and what pandemic movies were going to look like and how the pandemic would affect it, and should it even be part of movies, should we just ignore that it happened? And this is a movie where it's the pandemic is a character in the movie, but it's not super important, because it's the fact that all these people were people were losing their jobs, losing money, that they were turning to these sort of quote unquote get rich quick schemes and playing the stock market. And a lot of the whole thing that happened is that people who weren't getting into stocks were thinking well, fuck, maybe I'll give this a shot. And yeah, it's just I said this during Glass Onion, but how the wearing masks is such a great insight into people's characters. And so you have Anthony Ramos is works at a GameStop, and he keeps on pulled down his mask to talk to his boss, and his boss is always taps his nose to show him that you need to be wearing his mask. And yeah, I don't know, it was interesting that something that happened now 3 years ago can feel such a period piece.
Yeah, and I'm all for it. I'm past the please don't make movies about the pandemic stage, and now I'm let's get some pandemic movies. What an interesting time to set a film now that we're on the out of it. I didn't see this movie, but I did edit a Guess Your Movie game with Craig Gillespie, which is the second of 2 Guess Your Movie games we've done for Letterboxd, and it's my favourite show we do, and it's the rarest one we do, and they're so fun to edit. And Craig Gillespie seemed like a really cool guy. I liked there was a question about Fright Night 2011 in there, and I got to download footage from it, and I was yeah, I remember this movie. This movie's awesome. One criticism I saw of this, again, didn't see it, but saw of it, was it's a movie about the little guy taking on the stock market, and they cast recognizable A-listers as the little guys. And it's I know Seth Rogen and shit play the high ups, but I do wonder if Paul Dano needed to be not Paul Dano, if he needed to be someone no one had heard of so that you don't watch it and go, Paul Dano's not struggling for money. Like, he's one of the people that he's, in real life, he's like part of the like rich.
That's
elite, you know?
I think that's a bizarre criticism.
Yeah, that's like a criticism you could make of any movie starring a famous actor and actress.
Starring Paul Dano, I will.
Yeah, I think that this
I just don't agree with Sandra Bullock's casting in The Blind Side because she was playing a woman who, up until that point, no one had heard of.
Yeah, well, I mean, there have issues have come up about The Blind Side. I think it's insane, frankly. Like, they're one of those things where it's like people looking for a reason to complain about a movie. Like, who gives a shit?
I give a shit.
I think that's stupid to give a shit.
I think you guys are acting like casting can be anything. Casting's super important. Casting's like, you can
but it doesn't undermine the film in any way.
You're arguing that any movie featuring a character that is supposed to be a regular person, like Mark Wahlberg wouldn't have a career if we applied that rule to anything he did.
Yeah.
Like Ted?
Yeah.
Ted 2?
The list goes on.
I wouldn't be able to watch those movies.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's an ensemble cast. I think, like, everyone in this film pretty much has a recognizable name. Yeah, no, I having seen the movie, I think that's a very silly complaint.
Having seen any movie, I think it's a very silly argument.
I think, genuinely, I think you guys need to open your mind a bit. I'm shocked by this, like maybe not this movie specifically. I understand.
I get metatextual casting, and I'm a big fan of it. But it's like, I also don't think that Paul Dano's the kind of like asshole A-lister that I'm like, oh fuck that guy, he has so much money.
You imagine if it was like Jared Leto playing the main character.
So it's like I don't get, and also that like one of my like praises of this movie is that like Paul Dano is so good at it and at just playing a regular guy, which is something that I didn't know he could do. Like, all his mannerisms, the way he speaks, he's not doing that sort of Paul Dano weirdness in the film. He seems like a, well, you know, I say normal in quotation marks kind of guy.
Nice.
Because he's playing this lol kitty stock market YouTuber. But
lol kitty, as in lolcats?
Yeah.
Okay, just clarifying, that's what you mean.
Yeah, he's got this whole thing about cats, but but the last thing I'll sort of say on the movie is that like it's a fascinating, but also just like an incredibly frustrating, because it's the story about how like you said, the little guy taking on the big corporations, but it's like the end of it, and this is what happened in real life, is that it's like, yeah, the government just bailed out the big corporations and the little guy ended up still losing, because it's like, yeah, the system is broken. I mean, it has caused some changes, and like a lot of those hedge funds operate differently now, but yeah.
For the worse, yeah. I remember when this happened in real life, watching a clip from like Fox News or something, and there was some old rich guy being interviewed about it, and he starts weeping. And they're like, what's up? And he's like, it's just, you know, because I care. And it was the least sorry I've ever felt for someone crying. Was this old rich man complaining that the free market was being utilized by the lower class.
People,
you know? Yeah. Like, it's like, this is what it's about, you fucking dipshit.
Yeah.
Crying, what a loser.
Yeah. No, like, I would recommend the movie, especially, you know, someone who's into class warfare as yourself, AJ.
Thank you so much.
But be prepared that you will recognize the lead actor.
I'll be like, wait a minute. This is a problem I have with every movie. I watch, like, I don't know.
Ted.
Give me a Ted, and I'm like, isn't that... Why is Mark Wahlberg...
Hanging out with the swearing
we can't escape from Mark Wahlberg. It's like, you set up an example, and then it's just go with that for the rest of the day.
but like, for those listening at home, it's this weird Mark Wahlberg thing introduced halfway through the podcast.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute, but did you feel the same way when you were watching The Crown and be like, hang on a minute, Elizabeth Debicki is nowhere near as famous as Diana. I can't believe her in this role.
I did not watch The Crown, is my excuse there. That's how much I hate
and
class
that's the reason,
warfare.
And that's the reason why you didn't watch it.
No, AJ, you love class warfare.
Oh, sorry, I love class warfare, but I don't want to...
You hate classes. I love the warfare between them. Expendables 4, none of us saw it, but it's like, I don't know a single person that saw this, and I can't believe it came out this year.
Anecdote I can offer about this is I thought that it was really funny that the director of this made like a John Cena movie before it, and in the trailer for that movie, I can't remember what it was called, one of the things it said from the director of Expendables 4, which was not out yet. Oh, wow. And I just thought that was really like desperate, because they're like, no one's going to see this movie, we'll chuck in Expendables 4, most people will just go, right, the Expendables. They won't think like...
Yeah. Next Goal Wins, none of us saw.
This has got to be the biggest surprised I didn't see it movie of the list, I reckon. Because I think first of all, Next Goal Wins has been a movie, I don't know if you gentlemen remember, we have discussed this probably going back to like most disappointing or most anticipated films of 2018. Like this has been...
Well, wasn't this the next movie he was meant to move on to after the first Thor that he did?
Yeah, it's been ages, and in that time, Taika Waititi's like film Twitter stock has fallen so much, and then I just heard really middling reviews about this and didn't see it, and it's like, fuck, man, that's crazy. No one saw the new Taika Waititi film. No one in New Zealand is really talking about it, and it has like, it has like the naked Samoan guys in it, like.
But also like when this was first announced, and I don't know, I mean, researchers can go back and see what I said about it when it was first announced if we did talk about it. But I was like, what is the story here? Like, they didn't win anything. So, like...
Right.
You can't make... I mean, it's very hard to make an inspiring sports film about an underdog sports team who, performs basically as expected.
Rocky, one of the greatest sports films of all time.
Maybe the quintessential sports film he loses.
I have to respectfully disagree with you there, Jeremy.
That's
not,
okay.
Not I used the word respectfully.
Your respect.
I didn't use that earlier with AJ's insane criticism of Dumb Money. But I
think it's a fair criticism.
I think it's insane. But I love a sports film where it's about proving
the friends you made along the way.
Well, it's about proving you had the ability to go the distance, not to actually win. Or like we're making it to. I haven't seen Next Goal Wins, but like making it to the qualifier is enough. Well,
I guess Cool Runnings, the greatest sports film of all time.
Exactly.
Same thing.
Yeah. Eddie the Eagle. I don't know, like where it's a lot more about triumph for the human spirit.
True. I apologize and withdraw my critique. It's bullshit. It just looks like the movie sucks.
The movie The Creator, which was the new film from Gareth Edwards, about AI warfare. It's about class warfare, kind of, AJ. One of the classes was AI.
What an interesting movie to talk about, and how uninteresting I find it now. I think when this came out, it was like, hey, original IP sci-fi is out. Gareth Edwards, pretty good
Hasn't made
record.
A film since Rogue One.
Yeah, like I think this could have been more of a big deal than it was, but it really wasn't. Did this flop? Did this bomb?
I'd probably call it a flop. Yeah.
Well, the problem is the movie concept had basically already been covered and done to perfection by Mission Impossible. So I mean, who needs to see more about AI after the entity?
It is funny that Mission Impossible feels like an AI villain in the context of like everyone's fears of where AI is currently, whereas The Creator feels like it was written in 2019 before AI was like a popular buzz term, and it's so unintentionally loaded because the movie sort of equates the AI robots almost to like a subjugated
to like
class
refugees,
of people. Refugees, and it's like, are you trying to make me feel sorry for AI in maybe the most tumultuous time for AI in history so far?
I do think that it's like watching the movie, and it's like, oh, the AI took over, and now, we've got this, like, class warfare with them. I was like, this is the most, like, releasing this in 2023, this is the most fucking on-the-nose shit. Like, I've seen this. And then the movie becomes like, actually, AI are kind of the good guys. And I was like, you're releasing this in 2023.
Yeah. I will say, like, didn't hate it or anything.
Beautiful
but
film
haven't
to
thought
look at.
about it. Yeah, that's true. I haven't really thought about it much since seeing it. I will say that the aspect of it that I found the most fascinating was that they have an ability with AI cops, and you could do a whole movie about this, where not just AI cops, but AI robots in general, they look indistinguishable from humans in a lot of cases.
It's a big fucking hole in their head.
Yeah. But if they die, you can eject their memory card, put it into another AI body, and for about 30 seconds you can ask how they died, and they wake up and are suddenly like, what the hell's going on? Or is it humans you can do it to, and you can put human memory in an AI bank for like 30 seconds. Very interesting, I thought. Most interesting scene in the film is them talking to a dead human through an AI robot's body. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. Jeremy, it's your time to take over the mic, because Paw Patrol, the mighty movie.
Is this the only movie Jeremy's seen that none of us have?
I think so.
No, well, full movie perhaps. So this was fun. This is a great memory for me. Terrible movie, but great memory. This was the first film that I took my daughter to. So it's the first film that she's ever seen in the cinema. And I mean, look, if we're going to go by Ivy's review, absolutely enraptured. Like, just
best
completely.
Film of the year?
Oh, best, hands down, best film of the year. Best film of her lifetime.
Wow.
Also worst, also most middling.
Wow.
So, yeah. Went to I got popcorn for her, got a wee little drink. She was just so excited, sat on the edge of her seat. Didn't know going in that Skye, the only girl dog out of the original Paw Patrol members, they've since added more girls, which is great. Skye was her favorite character, and the whole movie basically centers around her kind of like wrestling with her identity as the runt of the litter, and figuring out that she's still got, like, abilities and powers, and she's still valuable. It's a beautiful storyline. Really, I have to say the villain was quite underwhelming. But yeah, Ivy had a great time. I sat next to her, basically watched her most of the time because she was much more entertaining than the film. But for the target market, great movie. Suggest it for anyone aged 3 to 5.
Imagine if the villain in Paw Patrol the Mighty movie was captivating. Imagine if the villain was this, like, grotesque, sinister, like, all-timer, and everyone's like, yeah, the movie's kind of average, but the villain was excellent.
And Ivy's, like, legitimately traumatized forever.
Yeah.
So, it's not actually on our list, and I mentioned it earlier on as something that none of us saw, but Five Nights at Freddy's also came out in October. The big video game film of the year. It's in the last week, I was like, you know what? I'm going to watch Five Nights at Freddy's because people, critics hate it, but the fans love it. And it's very rare that I do this, but I got like halfway through the movie and I was like, this is so fucking boring. And I turned it off.
You Jeremy did?
Yeah.
You did a Jeremy, didn't you?
But I do want to tell you guys my experience with Five Nights at Freddy's, and spoilers for Five Nights at Freddy's here. I didn't realize that. I think it was like a day and date on streaming sort of thing. And one of these things where, like, just kind of, I saw the casting announcements and it's like, Matthew Lillard's in it. He's playing William Afton, who through, pop culture osmosis, I understand is an important figure in the Five Nights at Freddy's lore. And then the trailer came out and he's like got a little plinth on his desk that he's playing a different character. And so I was like, oh, okay, it's probably a twist then that he's William Afton or something like that. And then I saw on Twitter, like a couple of days after it came out, or maybe a week, that it was one of those tweets that's like, fuck it, the entirety of Five Nights at Freddy's. And then I hit play on it and it was like the actual Universal logo in HD. And I was like, oh, it's because I assumed it would be a cam rip. And then I was like, so is this the actual movie? I assumed it was going to be a Rickroll or like, just some of the gameplay or something like that. So I just clicked to a random point in the video, and the screenshot I got was Matthew Lillard wearing a like Freddy Fazbear suit, holding the Freddy mask above his head as if he's just taken it off. And I was like, this is probably the twist in the movie, right? that like he was behind it. And then, yeah, watching the movie, it's like never brought up that he's like, oh yeah, I kind of know this place that you can be a security guard at when Josh Hutcherson is being like, can't hold down a job because he's too violent. But yeah, it's funny just going and that like just happened to click on like, this has probably ruined the movie for me. And now I've ruined it for you guys.
Thank you so much. The main reviews I heard from this is everyone who hasn't played the games being utterly baffled at the like weight of the lore that is crammed into this, because I think it's very easy to go, oh, a horror movie about animatronic animals like puppets at a Chuck E. Cheese type place. Great. Ripe for horror. What a fun horror movie that could be. And then apparently the whole thing is so like dragged down by insisting on inserting the like wealth of Five Nights at Freddy's lore that permeates the video game.
Well, I watched like almost an hour of it and like nothing really happened and there was no... But I will say, and
that's the lore.
I don't know if this means anything to you, but Matt Pat is in the movie. Are you familiar with Matt Pat?
I think so.
And because he's the game theory guy who's like, after all, it's just
game theory.
Yeah. So in the film, he plays a waiter at a diner that they're at, and they go like, he's like, oh, you better finish that up. Lunch is the most important meal of the day. And they're like, I thought it was breakfast. And he goes, some say that, but it's just a theory.
Ugh, horrible. Stop writing movies like that. That's my that's my thing. I want to create a term, and there probably already is one on TV tropes, for when a film that's part of like a wider intellectual property acknowledges a meme, an internet meme, by putting it in the dialogue, like with Obi-Wan and when he says hello there in the Obi-Wan series, because I reckon it has never been good. It's only
Isn't it just a fourth wall break?
But it's like it's a step forward more than that, because it's basically saying to the audience, we know what internet memes are. We know what they are.
A wink and a nod?
Yeah, maybe that's it.
So, AJ, the mic is now being taken away from you, and I'm giving it over to Jeremy. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which Jeremy, you and I only just watched last week. Not together, but the...
Definitely not.
But yeah, this is the prequel to The Hunger Games. It's I knew it was about the uprising of Snow, but it was interesting. Like, when the film was announced and when it was coming out, I was like, I actually haven't heard from anyone who read the book. I haven't heard anything about the book. I don't know if it's any good or not. And then the film came out and people seemed to enjoy it enough. Yeah,
it was just so different to the release of the original Hunger Games trilogy movies. Like, the Hunger Games was like this massive book that was just like already a pop culture phenomenon, and then the movies came along and it was like Jennifer Lawrence and, you know, just swept it into an even greater height of fervor. And so sort of for a prequel book to come out and there be like, I mean, I guess I've well aged out of the YA kind of demographic now.
You're just in the demographic now.
Yeah. But I certainly, you know, the murmurings of pop culture kind of hadn't reached my ears about the book. And then I saw the movie and I was like, oh, well, and then I heard that the movie was based on the book that the original author had written as well. And honestly, this is just one of those cases, of a prequel existing because it has to for money's sake, it feels like.
Yeah, I saw it described as like it's a franchise coming back because the studio wanted it to, not because the fans wanted it to.
Yeah, or because there was actually a compelling story to be told. And like, I mean, the thing is, it's just very, very odd to base a prequel on like the rise of your villain. I mean, I guess the episode 1 to 3 kind of gets
probably the most famous
there,
prequels
like,
ever made.
Yeah, I know, but like at least there's other people who sort of.
Jeremy, you don't have to pretend the Star Wars prequels were good. I think that actually aids your point.
I mean, I'm not Gen Z. I don't think they were good. But it's just like at the end, this film should have been 2 movies, 100%. If any movie,
it's very
had like
the film is very 2 halves.
Yeah. And the second half is definitely the worst half. Like, it's just, you finish the Hunger Games in the film, and you just go, oh, sweet Lord, there's more. There's like an hour more.
Yeah.
And a whole different story. Like, it's just, and then characters also, I'd say characters in the second half of the film, or that last hour, basically start acting completely differently and almost with completely different motivations to what they were doing and how they were acting in the first 2 hours of the movie. And it's just all of a sudden they just go like, oh, that's right, we have to get this train to the station that we like start off the other trilogy on.
Sometimes literally
quickly let's change direction entirely, and it just feels very just why and unsatisfying.
I understand what you're saying, but if any franchise is toying with splitting the source material into 2 parts, good luck arguing to the Hunger Games producers to do that again, because it fucking destroyed the original run.
Oh, true.
I think it could have been a decent series. Like, it's one of these films that like simultaneously feels rushed and like dragged out, but there's it's like 2 hours 45, which is a chunky movie. But the thing that I sort of felt watching it, and I read a bunch of reviews from people who have read the book afterwards, is that it's like, I think this would make a better book, to be honest. And it sounds like having his inner monologue, because I think it's written in the first person, makes a lot more sense, because the whole thing is like this sociopath manipulating everyone around him to become the President Snow that we know. And I think that he's kind of like Tom Blythe and Rachel Zegler, they're both good performances, they're both fun to watch, but they are like, he almost plays it like too relatable, and you get the set. I think you're supposed to always wonder if he actually cared about her or not. And so the film ends with him shooting at her, and then she just disappears, and you never see he never sees her again. And it's like that sort of fuels Snow's like quest for power, but there's this one songbird out there that he never knows what happened to, and he'll never be able to control. And yeah, I just think that his like descent into madness, sociopathy, wasn't done super well. And it's like,
completely,
I would have rather seen I mean, it's hard to make a film about like an emotionless psychopath, but like having the reveal at the end that it's like, oh, he actually never, like every single step he's done was manipulative, and it's not really paid off in the way that I would have liked.
Yeah, because the way that it's all filmed and edited together, and the characterizations, it's like it wants to tip the audience into kind of a will he, won't he, actually feel for her, and does he actually really care for her? Like, he intended to start out very self-interested, but along the way he clearly has moments where he's just like, oh, wait, actually I'm too invested in her now, and I'm just, and they. Yeah, I agree with you. If this was told from his perspective in his mind, and you're hearing his thoughts all the time in a book, that I can imagine that would be a lot more satisfying, because you're aware of the battle, or more aware of the battle. But otherwise, you just get what he actually does in action. I mean, I guess the performance could tip the scales a little bit more if he was showing a bit more on his face of that, internal struggle.
Yeah,
or if it was a struggle. But I mean, otherwise, I think the movie is beautiful. Like the film
it's not a bad movie. It's a good 3.5-star movie.
It brought me back to like just well-made movies of this kind. Like it was definitely like shot beautifully. The performances, on a whole, were really good. Rachel Zegler's performances and her singing were just amazing. Like I loved all of them. They were beautiful.
I think it's crazy. She shot this before So she shot Snow White before she shot this, and Snow White doesn't come out till 2025.
Yeah, Snow White's years away, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, now it is. Yeah. I mean, it was I would say, like 3.5-star journeyman workman style movie, really well done, but ultimately a little bit hollow. I think because of the story. And I mean, at the end, I messaged you guys about it, but at the end, like you see him, like he's fully abandoned his any sense of wanting to maintain a relationship with Rachel Zegler's character, and he sort of is rising to power. And they have this shot of him walking through the streets of what is it? Is it Pan Am City?
The
he's
capital.
and he's walking. They put him in this very kind of like symmetrical, well framed kind of hero shot, looking up at him. The music is kind of swelling, and it's not like, I don't know. For me, it was very like heroic rather than scary. Like they even have like, him looking at this fountain, and there's like a beautiful rainbow sheen that goes across the fountain, and it's like this swelling music. I'm like, what are we meant to think about this character at the end of this movie? It's just like, I know where he goes as a character in the end of the story, so I know it's terrible, and he's basically kind of Hitler. But like the movie's kind of showing me that, like, oh, look at this amazing person.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily got that from the ending, but I see where you're coming from.
I went back and took screenshots of it because I was I know you said that, and I was just like, how on earth did you miss that kind of sensibility? Anyway,
no, it's just that I don't necessarily think that it's like, oh, look how cool this guy is in the ending.
Sure.
It's fine. Anyway, speaking of cool guys, Saltburn, one of the big... This year's, like, big talking point movie.
Speaking of cool guys, it's such a funny way to talk about Saltburn.
Speaking of massive dicks.
Saltburn's kind of become the big talking point film of the year. And it's
the biggest movie of the year right now. It's top rated on most logged film on Letterboxd 2 weeks in a row, despite being a couple of months after its release.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's on Amazon Prime, and people are finally getting to it. But it's
there's word of mouth, I think, is a big part of it.
Yeah, but it is funny that it's like a lot of people. There's a lot of backlash about it, and it's one of those films that becomes so big that people are like, well, it's not that good. And a lot of people, like, the meme is now that it's like, if you don't watch many movies, Saltburn is the craziest thing you've ever seen.
I mean, I watch plenty of movies,
and it's probably the craziest thing I've ever seen.
Well, it's not like, it's shocking, but it's not shocking in ways I'm unequipped to. Like, I'm not going home haunted by the bathtub scene. I think it's a good scene, but they're like, I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too here by being like, I still really liked the movie, even though I have literary film intelligence, like, you can also be that. You can also be smart about film and think this was a good movie.
Yeah.
That's my response to the haters.
Yeah, I mean, I love this movie. I saw it. Did you guys see it in the cinema or just at home?
I saw it in the cinema, yeah.
Yeah, saw it at home.
Super fun experience watching this in a cinema with with normies who aren't as literary film intelligent as AJ and I. But yeah, like that every one of these sort of gross out moments, there's like 3 or 4 in the film, getting just like that visceral reaction. And I mean, the ending scene, which has now put Murder on the Dance Floor by Sophie Ellis-Bextor like in the American charts for the first time ever, which is interesting because I didn't realize until that, like, I listen to that song fairly regularly, and I have for the last 20 years. But that, like, I didn't realize...
While I dance around my mansion.
Yeah. But, like, I didn't realize that was one of those things that never made it to America, because, like, people are like, oh my god, I didn't, realize the song was so old, or, like, had never heard it before. But it's like, yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, I mean, we're so familiar with it because in New Zealand we have kind of almost, especially in the early 2000s, we had like almost an even split of pop culture, especially music from the UK and the US. Yeah. So we kind of like, I think, got the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and thank God we did. I don't want to live in a world without Robbie Williams.
Oh, absolutely not.
So, Saltburn, directed by Emerald Fennell, who directed Promising
AJ
Young
has
Woman.
A little crush on, I hear.
I think she's quite charming, is all I'm saying, Richard. But listen, Saltburn, watched it. Up until the last scene, I was like, yeah, this is great. 4 out of 5 stars. Last scene happened. I gave this from 5 stars purely because it was like, it had such a good cherry on the top of it that I was like, fuck it, 5 stars. And in the month or two since I've seen it,
You've been told that it's not cool to like.
Well, that happened first, and then I started scrolling through TikToks that were like, people are misinterpreting how smart this movie. Like, there's the scene, I saw a tweet where it was like the bit where at the end where Oliver is like just typing gibberish on his document to look like he's doing something, and someone was like, lol, this is Emerald writing the script, basically. And I was like, very funny. But it's like, since then I've read and heard analysis of it that just I'm like, this is such a rich, interesting movie. I think,
well, of course you love it. It's about class warfare.
But there is also there's an element of it that I think so let's talk the galaxy brain meme, which is increasingly becoming a useful tool for me to talk about things, I think. So galaxy brain meme, the small brain is like, this movie's awesome. The big brain is like, this movie's hollow. The bigger brain, expanded brain, is this movie's awesome.
And then like the god brain is like, I recognize Barry Keoghan, so I couldn't watch the movie. It didn't make any sense to me.
Because, like, there's so much in this that is so disgusting and gross and interesting, but the one thing in terms of class warfare, or however you want to put it, that I thought was, it's not really class warfare, but like, watching
it's really not.
I know. I'm saying like that's the misinterpretation, because watching this, there was a point where there's a reveal 3/4 of the way through the movie that Barry Keoghan's Oliver is actually not like a dirt poor what's it
misfortunate
called?
guy whose father was a drug addict and killed himself, and mother,
he's actually like upper middle class, and his parents love him, right?
And are just wonderful to him.
Yeah, and then of course, if you've seen the movie, you know Oliver goes on to kill everyone and inherit the Saltburn mansion. And my first initial like trepidation was like, so what? It's not a movie about it's not Parasite. You know, it's not a more hopeful Parasite where it's about a poor person screwing over the rich people and taking their ownership, which is what I think I would have written. It's actually a movie about a like upper middle class person who wants to be the upper crust of society, who yearns for it, who desires for it, and steps over everyone to get there, and it's disgusting and gross and like despicable, but that is a really unique take on the eat the rich narrative that has permeated in recent years, because
he wants to eat the rich just because they're tasty, not for any like class warfare reasons.
Because he wants to be part of, even though he's already more fortunate than others, and I think that's really fascinating, and I haven't really seen that in things before, and there's been a lot of talk about there's so many allusions in the film to like Greek mythology, and it just basically, it heavily implies a literary parallel to the Minotaur story, the idea of the Minotaur story is when you kill the Minotaur, you don't redistribute the wealth that the Minotaur's hiding, you become the king. Like, you become the new Minotaur, essentially, which is what the movie aims for, I think. I think this movie's great. I've thought about it so much since seeing it. I've thought about how just like breathtakingly erotic it is, how sexy this movie is. I love that final scene. It made me realize something about myself as like a beginner filmmaker, is like
how small your wang is.
No, yeah, that too. I love nudity. I love nudity from a non-sexual perspective. I think nudity is so interesting to, especially full frontal male nudity. I just think it's like, maybe because it's less commonly seen, but also because like, what a way to convey such human feelings, not only of vulnerability and, you know, not trying to hide anything, but in Saltburn's case, like decadence and self-indulgence, and it's very Greek, it's very biblical. I think this movie is so much smarter than a certain corner of film Twitter are giving it credit for, and I've thought about it more and more since, and every time I think about it, I like it more.
Wow.
Sorry, film Twitter. Sorry, edgelords. Saltburn is good.
We're kicking you off film Twitter.
No!
I'm taking your film Twitter privileges away. I mean, I really, really enjoyed this film until the end.
Like the best part of the film for me and Richard, and Jeremy's like, yeah, this ruined it for me.
Yeah, full frontal male nudity, hate it.
Like, I think it's crazy to me. I hadn't heard that critique that you were talking about, saying that, like Emerald Fennell, Fennell, typing, this is her writing the film. I just think that's the stupidest critique of this film, because the one thing I would say about this film, the writing is whip crack. Like, it is just like all the characters. Everything Rosamund Pike says is just like, amazing. Oh my gosh, I want to just put that on a wall and quote it. Like,
she's in the supporting actress conversation now because of Saltburn.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, it's just, all these characters are so much, like, while they're talking, it's so much fun to watch them and see what they do and stuff like that. And then I think as the cast gets winnowed down, and it's just, at the end, it's just Barry Keoghan's character and he's won. All I was left with was this just great sense of emptiness, but it was just weird. I just felt like a real, it's like the film is a tragedy, and it's extremely tragic, and yet, I mean, maybe I'm just too basic, but like the ending, it feels like a celebration, and I just feel like the film doesn't, and maybe it's the same sort of thing as the last film I was talking about with the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, that like the filmmaking itself and the vibe that you're left with at the end is so contrary to like what the story is that they're telling. And I think that like it's just this unabashed, like, celebratory sense of joy and fun at the end, and the transgressiveness of like him being naked, and it's like all anyone's talking about is like, oh my gosh, him dancing naked, lol, this is hilarious. And I'm like, if that's what this film leaves people with, and the story you're describing, AJ, is like this disgusting like look into how craven the desires that, like, I mean, to sort of further your analysis of it, that essentially capitalism pushes people not towards an appreciation of how much they have, but just a continual psychotic drive to have more no matter how much they have. Like, that should leave you with some pause, and it shouldn't take someone with a galaxy brain, literary film critic, to be able to sense that that's what's actually going on behind this. I feel like if that's the message she really wanted to tell, perhaps it should have been more on the nose, or at least somewhat telegraphed through the feel of the film at the end, that you should be left with this real sense of empty dread at who this person has been, rather than kind of laughing and going, oh my gosh, how awesome is that? He's hilarious. Look, he's like, and I'm going to listen to that song. I'm going to listen to that song over and over again because lol. I just feel like,
well, it's a good song.
I agree that reading of the film is a very interesting reading. I just think that in terms of actual filmmaking, that's not where she's actually directed the audience to go. But that's why I didn't like the ending, because I felt like it was it's a tragic, tragic story, but it didn't feel like it.
But like basic audiences misinterpreting the meaning of a film, that goes back to the beginning of film, right? Like Fight Club.
Like those stupid people at the Great Train Robbery that were like, oh, he's shooting us.
No, I think like it's a horror movie ending. I interpret the film not as a celebration, but as like a holy shit. And I don't think it's that much of a stretch to get there. I think that it has been, it's much like Fight Club or a handful of other movies. I think the wrong message might be being learned from it, but I don't think that invalidates. I certainly don't think it should have been more on the nose, because I think this is a film that is above anything else. It is about like decadence. It is about indulgence, right? And it is about these like sexy forbidden fruit that or these desires we all have in ourselves. And I think that the ending is horrific, and that's why I like it so much, because it's so bold. And I understand you're saying the like filmmaking language is sort of celebratory, but
not
exactly
just sort of. It's literally the most exuberant thing I've seen on screen in years.
But does that not add to the meaning for you? That adds to the meaning for me. That it's like from Oliver's perspective. The whole film is from Oliver's perspective. Therefore, at the end, he has achieved God status.
It's
and
like
it is
Thanos in Infinity War.
And disgusting, exactly. It's like Thanos in Infinity War, the greatest literary reference you can make.
Yeah. That's like the only way people can understand things these days. But it's interesting because like Emerald Fennell describes the film as a vampire film.
Yeah, which is on the nose given what happens in the second most disturbing sex scene.
Yeah. Anything else on?
I love it. He's consuming the bodily fluids of the people he wants to be. That is so mythological, you know.
Well,
that
he
is
gives
so
every person
Greek.
what they want.
Yeah.
But the problem with you saying that everything's so Greek is that in actual Greek stories there is actually a true north. There's always a true north of the Greek chorus that tells you what's wrong here, or like shows you. And like usually in these sorts of stories, there is actually a pure character who we are supposed to go, oh shit, look how this affected that person. You know, like, and I guess in this film, Felix is the pure character, like who ends up dying through. There is. I heard another reviewer say that there's literally no one to like in this movie, and I think that is actually a problem. If you're telling a morality tale, you need to actually show how this affects innocent people, how this kind of terrible behavior actually affects people, so that as a warning of like, this is why it's tragic for people to behave this way. And I think that just showing this one vampire, like upper middle class vampire, consuming the souls of the extremely rich, and then him celebrating about it, doesn't actually portray any great tragedy. Like, this is all occurring so far out of the realm of any of us that why should we actually take it seriously or care about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you get that with Oliver throughout the whole thing until the twist that you're like, oh, he's the good guy getting wrapped up in this world. And then it's like the thing of like desiring the power of the rich, the oppressor isn't the right thing. And I mean, Jeremy, you know, you despite having no one telling you this is bad, you were able to pick that up by yourself.
I respect you so much as an analyzer of film, Jeremy, but I agree with Richard. I think everything you're saying, all your problems with the film, I could argue for much longer than we have time for, is entirely the message of the film. I think it's a film that intentionally allows you to sympathize with what you think is a sympathetic character, only to be like, he's just a snake. He's just vermin trying to climb the ladder. Look at the state of the world. Look at the state of humanity. I think it's excellent. I really do.
Yeah. And hey, none of my critiques are to say anything like that about... I mean, I really, really enjoyed this film, and I think it's so beautifully made.
Oh, like, beautifully shot, the cinematography, holy
the
shit.
Writing, the writing, the performances, they're just all on such an A-level standard, and that's the reason why at the end I felt just a little bit hollow, because I was like, I just feel like I wanted it to kind of just not ram it home, because that would be inelegant, but I just thought it could actually... I don't know. This is just my personal reaction to it, and it's not invalidating the film or saying that it's not good. I think it's a very, very well-made film. There's a reason. I think beyond the gross-out factor, there is still a reason why this movie is dominating conversation. I think that there are plenty of films that go for gross-out factor and do disgusting, transgressive things
like Ted.
that do not get... that do not end up being talked about and kind of venerated like this, and the fact that it is, I think, speaks to what's behind all the shock stuff.
Yeah. And it's interesting, your main, the last thing I'll say on Saltburn, your main criticism there, Jeremy, could also be applied to the last film left that all three of us have seen. So let's leave that tease there and continue forward.
Oh, we could be going with that. It's funny, having now taken a break for a week and come back, we have lost all sense of urgency with this podcast. So I just want to point out again how funny it is that no one saw Wish, not even just inside this podcast, but outside as well. I don't know a single person that's seen it.
Their 100th anniversary film. Like,
so
seriously.
funny.
Wow, true.
I saw a thing that was like, you guys, you proud of yourselves? There's a 100-year-old company at home crying because nobody saw their movie.
And what's absolutely insane about that as well is that the film that Disney got, like, in the headlines for this year on their 100th anniversary was not the film they actually released, but it was the remake of their very first animated film that got absolutely pilloried, and like they basically were forced to go back and like redesign a whole bunch of the characters just to try and like quell some of the concerns about it.
Quell the concerns about it.
Wow.
Hunger Games. Wonka.
Yeah,
only I saw.
Hunger Games.
Only I saw. Wonka was one that I was very sort of apprehensive about, but like the fact that it's Paul King who directed the Paddington films was like, okay, maybe it'll be good. It's one of the films that we've known for a while. It was a musical, but that was kept out of the marketing. And it's just a freaking delightful film, you guys. Like, so it's what you would want it to be based on the director of Paddington. It's so much fun. It's so lovely. I do still think that Timothée Chalamet was a bit miscast. It's this weird thing where it's like, he's a good actor and it is a good performance. It's just wrong for this character, I think.
Right.
But yeah, he's good in the film. Just what you saw in the trailer of the like, nope, scratch that, reverse it, and just lacking that whimsy is still there. But it's a delightful film with some catchy little songs, and yeah, it's I liked it so much more than I thought I would.
I think I'll see this eventually somewhere.
Yeah, that's fun. Godzilla Minus One, one of the big surprises of the year. AJ and I have done a podcast about it already, but do just want to say, fucking rocks.
It's great fun. Go put every American action blockbuster to shame by watching Godzilla Minus One.
Another export out of Japan that was one of my most anticipated for the year is what was going to be Hayao Miyazaki's last film, but he's since come out of retirement again and is now apparently working on another film. It was called we knew it as How Do You Live for a long time, but it was called The Boy and the Heron in English markets. And yeah, saw this at the cinema recently. I've never been pretentious about subs versus dubs, but like I'd heard such good things about the dub and like Robert Pattinson's performance as the Heron that I really wanted to see the dub, and it was playing so much less for some reason. But I've finally got to a screening of it last week, and yeah, thought it was great. Some of his best animation. There's like scenes of the boy running through fire, and it's like crazy animation. Haven't seen anything like it before. And it's very much like a legacy film, I thought. It's very much about pass the torch, and there's all this stuff about like Mark Hamill's character, and the dub Mark Hamill's character. It's sort of like the creator of this world, and it's very much about like, you need to take over the storytelling of this world, but then like he doesn't, and because there's this whole thing about like Miyazaki has always struggled with that. It's like his son Goro Miyazaki entering the same profession as his dad, and just like not being as good. Like Tales from Earthsea, it's like maybe his first one as a solo director, and apparently Hayao Miyazaki walked out of the premiere because he was so disappointed. It's often considered the worst Studio Ghibli film, and they ended up making a film together from Up on Poppy Hill, which is quite nice. But it was sort of advertised as like, this is his final farewell to his grandson, to Goro's son, to be like, almost sort of the subtext being like, I wasn't a great father.
Please don't suck as much as my son did.
Yeah, but like I wasn't a great father to your dad, but you know, I want to leave my legacy for my grandkid.
I saw this in the cinema. I also saw the dub. I think it's interesting you heard good things about the dub, Richard. I heard quite poor things. I heard basically Robert Pattinson is insane as the Heron and unrecognizable vocally, basically, which is true, which is so funny because it's so different from what he sounds like that it breaches into like what's the point territory, like what's the point in casting.
Well, when I say I'd heard
Pattinson?
good things, I just wanted to hear Robert Pattinson.
Yeah, whereas like I heard like every other, like Christian Bale in this, a flatline performance for a lot of it.
Which is interesting because there is a little bit of like, why would you get Christian Bale? But in the original dub, that character is played by the same actor who played Howl in Howl's movie Castle, so that's why they got Christian Bale.
Right. Jeremy, I don't know if you've seen any marketing for this, but Robert Pattinson in this film sounds like this the whole time.
Your mother.
Oh my gosh. He's doing a Willem Dafoe impression.
And
basically.
Willem Dafoe's also in the movie.
Yeah.
He committed to the bit a bit strong.
A bit strong. I liked it. I think for me, like it's like A tier Miyazaki, but it's not S tier Miyazaki for me. And I guess I am surprised you would come out of retirement for anything less than an S tier film. But other people, I'm sure, enjoy it more than I did. I would say my main criticism with this film is I don't think the Heron is relevant enough to the plot to get a spot in the title. I everything that happens in this movie.
Title, yeah.
How do you live?
How unlike you to complain about titles, AJ.
It's just, it makes it sound like it's a story about like two unlikely friends who join forces together to become better or whatever. But the Heron is not like a plot hinging character. He's just there. He's just along for the ride, whereas the boy
he's not even a Heron. He's a gross little freak.
Yeah.
But what's the actual title in Japanese? Like the transliteration of it?
Well,
How Do You Live?
Yeah, well, it originally was.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I don't blame Western marketers for changing it to The Boy and the Heron for an animated film.
I agree.
Like, who's going to take their kid to How Do You Live?
Yeah, I agree. It has, classic Miyazaki cute little freaks in it. They essentially, this is... I wouldn't say massive spoilers for the film, but sort of just a direction to where it goes, is that they essentially go to this dimension where there are creatures running around that are like, they then transcend and become the souls of newborn humans, right? So you meet like, sort of like the Pixar's Soul movie, like, and they are these cute little, they look like the things from Princess Mononoke, these cute little things that just like potter around the world. It's very Miyazakian, and that's cool. I think, again, with a lot of Miyazaki films do this to me. I kind of lost what was happening by the last half. I didn't really understand what was going on for maybe the last act of the film as well as I understood the first act of the film. But it's great. Go see it. It's my first Miyazaki in cinemas, which was cool. So
yeah, I was so interesting that like in the States as well, in Japan, that original poster that's like sort of the crudely drawn, well, not crudely drawn, but like the sketch of the Heron, that was the only thing released from the film. There was no trailer, no other posters. It was just like, there's a new Miyazaki film, here's a rough sketch of one of the characters, and it became, one of the highest grossing Japanese films of all time.
Nice. I would also say I felt it was a little derivative of Spirited Away.
It is a little bit. I was talking to a friend of mine that it's like, how like Coco was like a greatest hits of all the Pixar stuff. It's a little bit like that, where it's like he's doing the greatest hits.
Yeah,
which isn't inherently bad. But, yeah.
For me, S tier Miyazaki is Spirited Away, Kiki's Delivery Service, My Neighbor Totoro, and personally, I know I'm alone on this, but Porco Rosso is my favorite Miyazaki film. And those films are all staggeringly different from each other. Whereas, like, if I'm going to choose between the two Miyazaki films where a young person is spirited away to another dimension where they learn about shit, it's clearly Spirited Away. It's one of the greatest films of all time, I think, Spirited Away. The next film we have to talk about, guys, is one that it's the type of film that appears on these spreadsheets we do for our most disappointing or look back at the previous year. And it's one of these films that gets added because I think Richard is being funny. And then the motherfucker goes and watches the film. And so now we have to talk about Migration.
Okay, so for the record,
it's actually real good.
This was on the most anticipated list. Like, I didn't just add this for this because it was like, there's a film coming out that's directed by the guy who made Ernest and Celestine, which is like an Oscar-nominated film, and written by Mike White, who's, you know, having a moment with the White Lotus. And then, I happened to watch Migration. Sorry about it. It's not that good. It's just it's a fine family film about ducks. And I'm not going to apologize for that, AJ.
It's like how Noah Baumbach wrote Madagascar 3.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
to pay for his divorce. But one other film that I saw, another animated film, Chicken Run: Dawn of the Nugget, which was it's not bad, but it's one of those things that like maybe you said about Indiana Jones that your main takeaway from it was like, fuck, Spielberg's a good director.
Yeah.
Watching Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget, I was like, fuck, Chicken Run is a good movie. This, like, the first one's so fucking good, man. Like, this one's pretty good. Like, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I would recommend it, and it's not on the same level as the first one, but it's a worthy 20 years later sequel. But first one's great, man. Every time they play clips from it, like when you think that she's like cut off Ginger's head and then she was holding the rope, and then it's so good.
It's so good. I forgot about how good Chicken Run is.
There's also a scene at the end where like all the chickens are together, and one of them is in the background is actually Feathers McGraw from The Wrong Trousers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then also another one that it was like one of my most anticipated that I just watched in my sprint before we did this is The Killer, the new
I can't
David
believe
Fincher
I didn't
film.
watch The Killer, man. This is crazy.
Well,
I should have seen The Killer.
I really wanted to see it in cinemas, and then it was just like, you know, it was a limited Netflix release, so it was hard to get to, and then finally watched it. It's another one of these films that, like, I think you just have to accept how funny it is. Like, it's one of these films that, like, if you could watch this and be like, well, he's not a very good hitman, or like, because the first like 20 minutes of the film is kind of like nothing happens. He like just describes how mundane the job is, and like he's set up in this this abandoned WeWork office, and is going through like how meticulous the job is, and like, you know, there's no chance to get anything wrong. You have to do everything by the numbers, and a lot of the job is really just waiting and assembling and cleaning. And then he's taking out this hit and he fucks it up and shoots the wrong person, and then the whole film is like going through and like all the people that were wronged by him fucking it up, he's like now going and taking them all out, and it's like done in little like almost
that
vignettes.
sounds great. I want to watch this movie now that someone's told me what it's about.
Yeah. It's and it's like, it is very funny, but it's also like the thing I was reading a thing about how, like, because there's like a bit in the film where he's waiting and he's just eating McDonald's, and it's like, you know, not oh, he's eating from a, you know, an unmarked bag. It's like there's a lot of about like commercialization and like the film is kind of Fincher. About, yeah, exactly, very Fincher, and it's a lot about like how mundane a lot of these things are, and yeah, it's a good movie. It's like it's a very like 90s Fincher kind of movie. It's a right. Return to the sort of you know, what people liked about those early sort of films. Also in around the sort of end of year, as we're getting into like Oscar season, Kills the Flower Moon is one of the big Oscar contenders this year, but I believe Jeremy has something he would like to say about Priscilla.
We just got an emergency.
How do you know that, Richard?
An emergency message to our group chat being like, wait, can we talk about Priscilla? Which I think is so adorable that, like, you value the sanctity of the, like, performance that is the podcast so much that you couldn't just wait for Richard to finish and be like, oh, off pod, are we going to talk about Priscilla?
Yeah. Instead, completely through my flow.
Jeremy, would you like to talk about Priscilla, a movie you've seen?
Half of.
Yeah.
Okay, well, can I just ask you don't spoil it too much? Because I do want to see Priscilla.
I won't spoil it too much. Believe me, I won't spoil it too much because I can't spoil it because Lord knows I saw half an hour of it. I just have some comments about Priscilla. I really, really wanted to be gripped and, like, drawn along into this movie. But man, Jacob Elordi is just not Elvis.
I've heard the exact opposite, dude. I've heard nothing but praise.
I've heard he literally is Elvis.
I've heard people are actually looking back at old pictures of Elvis and changing it so that it's Jacob Elordi.
No, and this is the thing. I had heard exactly the same thing that you had, and so I went in being like, "Oh man, I'm really excited about this performance." I'm just, like, and the fact that it's this sort of, more sort of honest look at the relationship between him and Priscilla, and kind of the necessarily creepy elements of how he approached her, and kind of. Brought her to live with him when she was still a teenager and kind of cut her off from her family and all that sort of stuff. And man, did this movie just, like, take its bloody time to do anything of interest at all.
And
well, it probably happened after the half-hour mark.
Yeah, man, in the 30 minutes I watched, it really struggled to progress and go forward.
The thing is that the 30 minutes you watch, it's just solely basically him and Priscilla, like, with each other, or her talking to her family about how much she misses him when they have a time apart. Jacob Elordi just exists now. He is a face, he is a person who is just so, like, of this moment that I couldn't see him. It was like, it was you with bloody
Paul Dano.
Yeah, Paul Dano. Like, not that you've seen that movie, but I barely saw Priscilla. But
yeah, not that you've seen this one.
No, exactly. But it's just, and also, can I just say, opening titles, wide Latin. Sophia Coppola, what is behind that choice? You use wide Latin as the font choice of your movie?
Listen.
Oh, just
Well, Poor
shocking,
Things used the Men in Black font.
What?
Poor Things uses the Men in Black font.
In the
Amazing.
Discord this week, in between when we stopped recording and picked it up today, a week later, I got a bit of flack in the Discord because people were like, AJ's talking a lot of shit about The Flash when he hasn't actually seen it, right?
Oh,
and I
look,
I
I'm
took
open.
that. Let me finish. I took that on board. And I was like, all right, I'll watch The Flash before we record again. I didn't. I didn't get a chance to.
What did you watch instead?
What did I watched the first 2 episodes of Ted.
You said you only watched one.
I watched
It's a
another one
yeah.
after you after I told you that. I just need to say this has got to be worse, right? Worse than not watching a movie and wanting to talk about it is watching half an hour of it and specifically complaining about the pacing. Staggering, Jeremy. I don't think I can stand for this be going not called out on the podcast. I think
the reason I only watched half an hour was not because I got interrupted. I literally just turned it off.
It was because
Oh
of the
my
font
God,
choice, AJ.
This is the font choice, AJ.
No, like,
all right.
Yeah, I just genuinely just was not interested anymore, and I was like, sorry, you don't deserve any more of my time.
Jeremy, I'm calling it out only because if I don't do it, someone else will.
Someone will with
look.
more venom.
Yeah.
Bring it on, Discord. Bring it on. I'm here for
I
it.
fucking hate you guys, Discord.
So, I mentioned it briefly just before, but your Kills the Flower Moon. One of the big art housey releases of the year, the new film from Martin Scorsese. It's pretty good, I thought.
All 3 of us have seen it as well, which is unique. And what I said before with the same criticism could be applied to Saltburn, I mean. This is a movie where the main character, fairly early on, is revealed to just straight up be one of the bad guys.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting maneuver, because the marketing for this film kind of gave me a different idea of who, what's the character's name?
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Ernest Burkhart was in the story, and I think it's interesting to focus on him as the hero, or the main character at least, because the marketing for this and the poster where he's like hugging what was her name? What's the
Lily
actress's
Gladstone.
Name? Lily Gladstone. It made it look like this is like a love story, and I was kind of hoping we'd get
for a white savior. You really wanted that white savior narrative?
No, I didn't actually, Jeremy. But I was like if it's not that I would critique Scorsese for it, but something that often disconnects me with Scorsese films is like, I've just got to do a bit of like mental gymnastics to watch a movie where the main character is a bad guy, and that's probably 90% of Scorsese's films, right? And in this, I was kind of hoping for a more sympathetic character, but boy, is it not the case. I think it's still a great movie, especially because the and spoilers for Killers of the Flower Moon, the character arc basically ends with like, it is not enough to apologize, it is not enough to say you regret it. It's like you actually have to like sacrifice all of who you are to make things better, and at the final hurdle, even after admitting to everything, even after telling his wife everything's true, he's still not able to stop lying to her, because the last thing she asks him is like, what was in the pills you were giving me, and he says he doesn't know. And I loved that. I thought that was its message, is like, he's still, after all this, he still doesn't have the courage to be 100% honest with her, and it sinks the rest of his life post story, so I thought that was really cool. I think the performances are great in it. I thought Robert De Niro is so fun to watch in it, despite how evil he is. And I like that it's like a true wolf in sheep's clothing, like he's
well, just the fact that he it's amazing that it's based in reality, right? And the fact that he knows their language, he it's like living with them, knows their language, and just, I guess, the true horror of someone who like is living in their culture, or like living at least adjacent to their culture, and like making a really good show of understanding who they are as people, and yet the just understanding doesn't actually mean that he empathizes with them or identifies at all with them as human beings. He just sees them as a different race, and people
disgusting.
Who can be.
It's pure evil. And I think the first trailer for this movie is probably my favorite thing I've seen for the movie, sadly. I think I liked it more than the actual movie. Just because
it was actually edited to a watchable length.
Yeah. I absolutely love the trailer for this, where it's like DiCaprio's reading this like parable about the world he's moved in, and he says like, can you find the wolves in this picture? And then
the wolves,
such a good line.
In this
such a good
picture.
And then it repeats it again at the end with the whole like cast of white characters like looking at the camera. Like, can you find the wolf in this picture? It captivated me. It pulled me into the film. And it's not that the actual film isn't that. It's just a bit more satisfying to see it wrapped up in trailer form, I think. But yeah, truly a wolf in the picture, right? Robert De Niro's character. And
what do you guys think of Brendan Fraser in this film? People are like, she needs to give back his Oscar.
I'm of two minds about it. Part of me is like, what the hell is Brendan Fraser doing with his performance? But then another part of me is like, well, if you're getting Brendan Fraser, it could just be anyone. But you got Brendan Fraser, so you may as well make it a memorable character, I guess.
Yeah. But it's also one of those things that I think the character itself is performing in the moment as well, like is being over the top. But also, I will say on Killers of the Flower Moon that this sort of happened to me with The Irishman as well, is that like a film it didn't really click for me, or like I didn't really like it that much until like the last 90 seconds of the film. And The Irishman, like the shot of the door closing on him, really just solidifying the like, was this all worth it? Like, look at where this life has gotten you. And in Kills the Flower Moon, it ends with this radio show, which for a brief moment I was like, is that Jack White? What the hell is he doing in this film? And then Martin Scorsese playing a radio announcer addresses and the at the end of a lot of based on true story films, when it's like they went on to do this and then they're still known today, and like instead of just coming up as text, it's like Martin Scorsese just tells the audience this. And I think Martin Scorsese is actually a pretty good actor. Like
Totally.
Like his delivery of that, and mentioning that her obituary years later didn't mention the murders being like the final line of the film. I was like, that it really hit home, and it made the whole film click in a different way, I thought.
Have you seen Shark Tale?
Yeah, man.
He's in that.
It's so funny that like there's a Wikipedia page, or at least there was at one point, for like Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese collaborations, and it says like they are often considered some of the greatest movies ever made, but it's like they are both in Shark Tale.
Along with the guy that plays Christopher from The Sopranos, and someone asked him once, did you enjoy being in Shark Tale? And he said, no.
One thing about this film that I really loved is just it's a bit counter to what I'm then going to go on and say about it, but like actually just Martin Scorsese is one of if not the best director in terms of creating a believable reality. Like, you know, like it genuinely just felt like I was in a time, you know, in a place and time that I do not know anything about, other than sort of just, you know, vague historical references. And the people, the village, the what was going on in the town, like it was just so fully realized, and just it felt like a documentary that was in a real place, but like more beautifully filmed, and you know, things more heightened slightly. But then I would say that the problem with Martin Scorsese is that he does that so well that he wants you to spend a lot of time in those places and a lot of time with these characters while they do things that aren't necessarily like. I just felt like this movie really could have done with like a 2-hour edit, you know? Like it's a shame to do that, because I think the filmmaking that's involved in the 3 and 3/4 hours in is amazing. But it's just too much. Like, seriously. And especially when you're telling such a horrendous story. As a viewer, it's very difficult to want to spend time with people who are doing this sort of thing, right? Like, and just that's just a media consumer kind of point, is I'm like, there's not really that many people in this that I actually... Like, I know where this is going. Like, there's nowhere good that any of this is going. There's no heroic character. Like, I compared it in my mind to Schindler's List, right? You've got, like, yes, all of this horrendous stuff is going on, and all around, like, the film is an excellent record of the brutality and evil that was wrought during the Second World War, and it was kind of unflinching from showing you that. But at the same time, it was based around a story where there was some hope. Like, you know, there were some people who were shining in the midst of the worst of humanity. And I mean, look, you know, this is based on a true story, right? So you don't invent true stories, or you don't invent false characters to give people false hope necessarily. But in terms of a film that a story that I want to spend 3 3/4 hours inside of, it's a hard story to spend that much time in.
There's a good argument that Lily Gladstone should have been the protagonist, or at least like
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And then I think the story would have been at least much more sympathetic. But I do think that Martin Scorsese is doing a good job at, like, you could say, like, an unflinching look at kind of what Americans did. You know, what settler colonist Americans did. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's a story that people should know, you know, because I think it has huge implications for the way that Americans look at now, and look at, you know, what the relationship between white Americans and Native Americans, or indigenous Americans, should be. But it is also really interesting, like, as a New Zealander watching this film, kind of being like, "Oh, this is effing awful," but like,
like, we do this shit all the time.
Well, pretty much, yeah.
But we will not say the F word. That is, we're in New Zealand. We're not allowed to say the F word.
So another film that's a big Well, Lily
Big
Gladstone's kind of main competitor for Best Actress is Emma Stone in Poor Things, the new Yorgos Lanthimos film.
Do you think they'll be nominated in the same category? I'd put Lily Gladstone in a supporting actress.
Oh, yeah, maybe she is supporting, yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, say things about it, AJ.
Say what kind of things? Could you describe sort of like a status of the things you'd like me to say about the movie?
Good things.
Very rich.
Give us some of your rich
things.
Yeah.
Poor Things, the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie. I was very excited for it because I think it visually looks insane. It's a very crazy looking movie. I thought that it wasn't exactly like the gripping character drama I was hoping it would be, but I'm still able to appreciate like what I saw, the movie I saw and meet it on its own terms instead of what I expected it to be. I think it's still really good. It's essentially Jeremy. I feel like it's a Jeremy hasn't seen it, so that's why I addressed him directly. It's essentially a story that I think asks, what if a woman was just popped into existence from nowhere and then was left to figure out the world for herself? Like, what things
surely men would be respectful of that.
Like, what things would she learn about the world? What things which wouldn't seem weird to her seem crazy to us? And it's that for however long.
So the Fifth Element.
Yeah,
it's better than the Fifth Element, but it's like a weaponized Born Sexy Yesterday trope where that's the point, right? Is like exploring that, and I will say this: if people haven't seen it, it is far more sexually, not necessarily explicit, though it is pretty explicit.
It's really explicit.
The amount of sex in this movie staggered me. Every 5 minutes it feels like there's some kind of depraved action going on. And I think one fun comparison to something like Saltburn is they're both movies about like someone who's sort of aiming to inherit a place that has alarming amounts of nudity from an A-lister in it. I think because Emma Stone gets, full frontal nude in this. There's loads of dead bodies that you just see fully nude. I don't know why I'm going into this. I think it's cool that I think it's cool that nudity in general is being destigmatized in movies, and like I feel like 20 years ago, if an actress did, not even 20, probably like 10 years ago, if an actress did a nude scene, it becomes like, holy shit, like she must be so desperate. I feel sadly as well.
Nah, Kate Winslet peed on camera.
That's
in like
true.
In the early 2000s.
Saoirse Ronan took a shit on camera.
This is all great
Frances
stuff, guys.
McDormand took a shit on camera and won an Oscar for it.
Let me just reach into the files on my computer and I can tell you.
And what I'm saying is, it's like between this and a few other examples, I think Emma Stone and even the favorite Yorgos Lanthimos' previous movie, I think it's cool that like nudity has moved from the realm of like, now if you're an A-list actress, don't do this, to like, shut the fuck up, who cares? It's about the art, it's about the movie itself, and some movies are enhanced by this sort of thing. To be clear, I think this is a good thing. I just think it's worth talking about, and it's kind of interesting to me. But yeah, Mark Ruffalo is hilarious and great in this movie. I don't necessarily want to spoil it completely, but I did kind of think the very ending was like could have been like the chess pieces kind of.
Well, it's just like, and here's a new villain to take down in the last 5 minutes of the film.
That's my main problem with it, yeah. Though I think there is a way that you could tinker things to make it a little bit more satisfying. Richard, you didn't love this.
I didn't love it. I don't know, maybe I was just expecting more. One of my big issues was kind of the pacing as well, that it's like, it takes so long to get going. This film, and then it has like quite a good second act, and then the ending is just like introducing new elements to wrap up immediately. There's just a few sort of strange things. Like, it's one of those things that like it's annoying to not love it because it's like it's the high art film of the year, and so it's like, I get it, I get why everyone liked it. I don't not love it because I didn't get it. And I want to make that clear.
Totally.
I'm just as smart as the rest of you.
If any of you even suggest that I'm not as smart as the rest of film Twitter, I will blow a gasket.
So
we'll talk about this more in our Oscars.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. Yeah.
Episode. I'm sure.
The last thing we have here is that the Wes Anderson did a bunch of Roald Dahl short stories. Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar being one of them. AJ, you watched them?
So my main take, I really like The Wonderful World of Henry Sugar and all I think there's 3 others, and it's cool. They're sort of like, it's a very Wes Anderson-y idea, but it's like the whole, each of these 4 short stories are done to look like they're filmed on a stage, so you see like the wall moving and stuff behind it, and across the 4 short stories, they share the same handful of actors, which is really interesting. I think this should have been The Wonderful World of Henry Sugar and Other Stories, which is what the anthology book it's based off. And I think they should have been released as an anthology movie, much like The French Dispatch was, because I think by separating... So the Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar is like maybe 50 minutes long, and the other 3 are like 20 minutes long, and they're all great. I just think they should have been one package. But they're fun. They're good. I have really nice memories of The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. I remember my teacher reading it to us when I was in year 8. And to find out it was being made was really interesting to me because I think it's such a well-written story. Roald Dahl is played by Ralph Fiennes in it, and he has interstitial moments where he comes and he's like, he lives in a caravan and looks very grumpy and is sort of like annoyed has this annoyed demeanor to the way he's telling the story. It's really just like crunchy acting, fun performances to watch. I really liked it. I think it was a good film, good series of short films.
Nice. Well, that brings us to the end of the year. Is there any other films that anyone wants to mention briefly? Now, keep in mind,
got
I
a few
did say
here.
Briefly.
So, did you want to talk about Air, or did you already talk about Air? Blackberry. Did we already talk about Blackberry?
Already talked about it, OJ. That's why I skipped it.
I have one that I would like to talk about, which...
It's the first 30 minutes of...
It was originally filmed as a film, and then it got broken up into a limited series, All the Light We Cannot See on Netflix. Just to say, this is one of the best books I've ever read. And it is, barring none, and I include my comments about Aragon in the end credits scene from last pod, barring none, the worst transfer from written material to a filmed product I have ever seen in my life. It was so disappointing in almost every way. The performances were horribly melodramatic. Mark Ruffalo in this is just you would not think that he was an actor. He's American trying to play French by way of all the French people have English accents in this film for some reason. It's just so bad. And I just had to say it because I was so excited for this when they announced it was going to be a movie, and then they said, it's going to be a limited series on Netflix. I was like, that's even better. More time in this world. And no, it is just atrocious.
So that's your most disappointing of the year, would you say?
Actually, though, it really is.
Yeah. A rare misstep from Sean Levy there.
Richard, do you have a most disappointing of the year?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mine's Mission Impossible, as I said, I think earlier in this episode. I'm not sure.
Yeah, mine would have to be Strays. Not seeing the penis flying through the air.
I would briefly like to mention a few films. My favourite film of the year is a very, very independent festival darling called How to Have Sex. It's definitely this year's answer to After Sun, which was my favourite movie of 2022. It's harrowing, but it's so wonderfully made. It is so naturally acted. The story it tells is so beautiful and tragic. Really loved it. The title... gives the wrong message. I don't think it should be called How to Have Sex. I'll say that. I think that sends a strange message about what the film is. When I got COVID, I checked out No One Will Save You on Netflix, which I loved. It's such a good alien movie, and I didn't know this till watching it. So to give you guys the thing that hooked me, it is a film which more or less, the point is that no one says anything. It's got no dialogue in it, which is such an interesting gimmick to watch in a feature-length version of, instead of just a short film. If you like things like Signs or Nope, it's a little bit nopey. This is like a Netflix budget version.
It was like a Hulu film or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it is great. I think both of you would quite like it. I think the alien designs in it are really unique, and the no dialogue thing is used to create tension. So, like, to give you an example, there's sort of one of the character actors. It's got Caitlin Dever in it as the main character, and you know the whole film that she did something that has isolated her from her small town community, right? We don't know what it is, but we know that no one in the town likes her, and she's going to the police station to tell them that she's been having home intruders, basically, and you're watching this being like, how is no one going to speak in this moment? Like, it is very clear what's happening. How is this going to be conveyed without dialogue? She walks into the police station. The first thing she sees is a cop and an older woman who know her, and there's tension rising. And you're like, how are they going to do this? She goes to open her mouth to say something, and the older woman spits in her face, and then no one says anything. You know what I mean? So like, not only does it have no dialogue, there is narrative tension built around. How are they going to get out of this? They're going to
break the streak. Similar film that I'd want to mention that I saw, film called Monolith, which is it's like an indie Australian sort of thing. Stars this actress Lily Sullivan, who was in Evil Dead Rise. She's like the main character in it, and she's so cool, man. She's great. She had a great interview with her and Alyssa Sutherland. But it's about this like disgraced journalist or podcaster who's like moved back into a parents' home. They're not there, and she's the only actress that appears on screen. And she's doing this podcast about and interviewing people about these like strange bricks, these like black bricks that have just shown up in random places in people's lives.
Great. This sounds so good.
It's fun, yeah.
Yeah. I also watched Theatre Camp, a movie that I had my eye on since I edited like I think it premiered at Cannes or Sundance, and I edited a letterbox video about it. And I really like what's this fucking name?
Ben Platt?
Jimmy Tatro, who's in American Vandal. He's a main character in this. Ben Platt, I wasn't necessarily excited. He's pretty good in the film. I watched this because I kind of had told myself it was the Theatre Kids School of Rock. It's not really, and Jeremy,
you wouldn't shut up about it being Theatre Kids School of Rock.
I was surprised you didn't watch it, Jeremy, but I think you might like it, because my problem with it was there's no in if you're not a theatre kid. It's very like, even like someone like Jimmy Tatro or Ayo Edebiri are in it, and they play outsiders, but they're not the main characters. And ultimately, like, the jokes, the stuff that's being made fun of in the film is like, this would be so good if it was mixed with an audience surrogate. Like, it'd be so good if there was something more tangential, or not tangential, but like tactile, holding the story together. But it just...
AJ, have you ever watched Schmigadoon?
No, never heard of it.
Right, so exactly. So Schmigadoon is essentially like a TV,
sounds like you made up the word on the spot.
It's an Apple TV series that is honestly like one of my favorite things that I've watched in the last 5 years. It's so good.
Hey Jeremy, it's Richard in the edit booth again. So sorry, they've actually cancelled Schmigadoon since we recorded this. So there you go.
It's Keegan-Michael Key and cannot remember her name from SNL. Cecily Strong from SNL, and like this massive cast of like all of these crossover musical theater to like film and television, including like Aaron Tveit, and
Ariana DeBose.
Yes, Ariana DeBose. Like, it's stacked.
Alan Cumming.
It's absolutely stacked with all of these incredible musical theatre performers. Anyway, brilliant. But I genuinely, as someone who loves musical theatre and knows all of the references they're riffing off of for the whole season, I was just like, how on earth would anyone who doesn't love musical theatre as much as me ever get into this show? Like, because my enjoyment of this show is entirely based on how well they are sending up all of these musicals that I know and love.
Theatre Camp's also a mockumentary, which I was like, this doesn't need to be a mockumentary. I think it kind of gave it a weird angle. Ayo Edebiri in it is essentially Jack Black in School of Rock, like she lied on her resume and is now having to teach theatre. And again, it's like, is this not who you sent her as the protagonist? I don't know. I also watched Flora and Son, a film I was looking forward to, directed by John Carney, who directed one of my favorite movies of all time, Begin Again. I love that movie. I love Sing Street. I'm So on Once, which is generally considered his masterpiece, which I just didn't get into when I saw it. Flora and Son, pretty disappointed by, gave me almost nothing. It's not as musically interesting as his other films. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt is kind of sticks out as being like by far the most famous person in the film, and it's kind of like a long distance love story between him and the main woman, and I kind of didn't buy it. A lot of people love Flora and Son. I think it's pretty unremarkable. And the last one I wanted to talk about is a film that is so close to being something I could see myself making in $1 genre, or attempting to make, but it has one fundamental thing I didn't like in it. It's called Late Night with the Devil. It stars David Dastmalchian as like a 1970s late night talk show host of a late night show that is dwindling in numbers. So he experiments with the form to try get more viewers, and you're essentially watching the last ever episode of the show where they brought in a like girl that is believed to be possessed by the devil, and so it's such a good concept. And if for $1 genre the winning genre was like late night show, this is what I imagine I would go for. My problem with it is it looks like the 70s, right? It's so authentic, but they clearly, and this feels like something they got so far through the script and we're just like, fuck, we've just got to do this, is that every time so it opens with like a documentary, like this is the last episode that aired live that anyone ever saw, you know. So I forgave it. I was like, all right, give me a documentary introduction to it so that I have context, fine. But then every time there's an ad break in the fictional show, it goes black and white and is like an objective camera, like watching the characters, and so much plot is relayed to you in those moments, and I was just kind of like, this is ruining the film. Like seeing it not be essentially found footage, it's like, why I can imagine this being like something the writers would have just been stuck on, but it just does not work for the film. I was pretty disappointed that it went there, but other than that, it's pretty interesting. So, well, those are my ones.
Oh yeah, well, you know, far be it from me to let AJ have the last word. I also want to mention some films that I saw that I didn't talk about, because I also saw a bunch. Some good comedies this year. Joyride was a lot of fun.
Need to see that.
Had a lot of heart at the end of it as well. Really good. Anatomy of a Fall is one that didn't come up, but I think will probably come up in the Oscar conversations. But yeah, we also Polite Society was a lot of fun. About like a wannabe stunt woman, and it's kind of like a shot in the same sort of like Scott Pilgrim sort of way, where there's like a lot of fights. It's clearly heavily inspired by that. Champions was a film as well about like Woody Harrelson coaching a disabled basketball team, and it's just like, aren't movies better than this now? Like, that was my review of it, was just that it's like, it's just such like a safe kind of all right comedy that you could see from like 1998, and it's like, I thought we had passed this. I thought movies were better than this now. So I think, yeah, Boogeyman, I think I mentioned at one point. But The Boys in the Boat is a real funny one that like came out just at the end of the year. And it was like George Clooney's like Oscar sort of like, it's about the team that the US team that went to the Olympics during World War II. And it's just so fun, like I've seen so many memes of it now that it's like, you know, the meme of like guy holding up like the vial, like Eureka, I found it. And it's like George Clooney when he finds the most forgettable script he's ever laid hands on. That it's like George Clooney just like makes his directorial efforts are just like
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's but one film I can't believe didn't come up that like one of the weirdest films of the year, The Pope's Exorcist. I completely forgot this came out this year.
That came out last year?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Insane film. It like it can't decide what its tone wants to be. Like there's trailers of this where it's edited and it's like, oh, this is a comedy, but it's like those are the only moments of levity in the film. But then the film and it's like I saw a tweet that was like it was like The Pope's Exorcist, you have to come with me, there's like, you know, exorcists that need to be done, blah 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 like a parody of like a sequel tease, and all the replies are like, that's actually what happens at the end of the film. And that like the film ends with, it's like, you've excised either one or two of the demons of 200, don't worry, we've like found where the rest of them are. And then he hops on his little Vespa and drives away to like excise the another 198 demons or whatever. It's so weird. It's such a weird film. And with that, we wrap up the year.
Every film we saw in 2023. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Let us know what your most disappointing, your favorite, your least favorite, your, you know, what did you watch in 2023, I guess. I'm genuinely interested to, if there's anything I've missed that you think I specifically would like. I hope people have a good enough idea of my taste. Please recommend it, and do the same for Richard and Jeremy if they want, I guess. I'm not their mums. So thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for the post-credit scene after this music ends. And stay tuned because next week we're going to be doing every film we will watch in 2024. So get excited for that. I'm sure it will be just as long and tedious as this one, even though we haven't seen any of the films we'll be discussing. And I never understand how that works. I never understand how we can talk so long about movies we haven't seen. But that is
well, I mean, just go to like, you know, AJ's segment on The Flash and you'll get the answer.
That's true. That's true. Maybe I'll watch The Flash by next week. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Stay tuned for the post-credit scene, and we'll see you next week. Welcome along to the post-credit scene. This is a segment at the end of each episode. If you donate $5 or more, you get to ask us something or get us to talk about something in this, the post-credit scene. Richard and Jeremy are both here. And Richard, can you tell me who it's from and what is it?
Yes, so last week I put the call out, I said we're running out of these. And then a couple of people in the Discord are like, I sent one in ages ago and you guys just haven't done it. And so, yeah, it turns out that a shit ton of questions just weren't taken from Patreon to the Google sheet that I'm reading off.
Have you scrolled down the Google sheet?
Yeah.
Because I separated them so that no one is like 2 weeks in a row, basically. So
oh yeah, okay, yeah. Talking about the like, oh, there's one row further down, but no, yeah, there was like maybe a dozen questions that I just went back through our Patreon DMs and would never add it to this list. Some from like a year ago. And so I'm gonna have one of them now. So we were on the go. Someone asked this on the Discord, and I said you have to send it in if you want the answer to this. So this is from Jake, who said, "What are the appropriate toppings for a meatball sub?"
Good question, because I think a meatball sub, to me, the whole point is that it's like an undiluted.
Yeah, the meatball is the main character.
And this is something that I think a lot, like Peter Pit, the I don't know if that's international, but there's a Peter place in New Zealand called Peter Pit that like
PITA, you're saying?
Yeah, that treat the like the chicken or the beef as like just another of the ingredients you want evenly distributed through your pita, and it's like, no, I want it mainly to be chicken Caesar. I want it, and it's like 1 part's chicken Caesar, 1 part's iceberg lettuce. Me personally, the only accoutrement I'm willing to allow in a meatball sub outside of meatballs and cheese would probably be like spinach leaves. I think I've had sun-dried tomatoes in a meatball sub before, and they were okay, but it's still like, I wish I was eating a meatball in this mouthful.
Yeah.
If the question is what's healthier for you, don't eat a meatball sub, I think is my answer there. But
Jeremy, do you have feelings about this?
I have exactly the opposite of AJ. I am so routine. I'm so routine with my Subway order that literally I just swap out the meat, and literally I have exactly the same sauces and vegetables with a chicken classic, a chicken teriyaki when they have it, a meatball sub. So I just go Italian herb and cheese, meatballs, smoked cheese, and then lettuce, tomato, cucumber, green pepper, and carrot, and then Southwest and barbecue sauce. No salt and pepper, thank you. Wrap it up.
Wow. So I feel I don't really eat Subway anymore.
That'll be $25, thank you, Jeremy.
I hadn't had Subway in like 4 years or something, and I went there the other day, and I was just like, holy crap, this is like the same price as what I used to pay for a footlong. Cost of living crisis.
I had a similar experience, actually. I had Subway for the first time in December, for the first time in years. And like the 6-inch of the day is like the price that a footlong used to be when I go there. But so I feel so strongly about this, and it like infuriated me. So I used to get Subway a reasonable amount. I loved the meatball subs, and like when you would get it, I would get I loved the garlic one, the bread and meatball sub with the smoked cheese toasted, and then they would say any vegetables on this, and I would go no, and they would always dig their hand into the lettuce, grab out a handful of their like
iceberg lettuce,
like soggy, gross, wilted lettuce, and they would go any vegetables, and I go no, and then this has happened on more than one occasion. They would put the lettuce on. They would start putting it on, or they would hold it above, so all these like gross little bits of lettuce would be dripping on. And I would say no, and they go, oh, just lettuce. I go, no vegetables, thank you. Because I feel so strongly that like a meatball sub is just a meatball and cheese and some sauce. Like, but then, and everyone would be so confused by the fact that I didn't want any vegetables on this. But the thing is, up until, so this is I'm talking like 13 years ago now that I would be having Subway, and up until maybe like 8 years ago, the picture in Subway of like, they've got the examples of all the different subs, the meatball sub had no other accoutrement on it. And so it was like, they would be so confused. I would have these discussions with the people there, and they'd be like, oh, are you sure? And they would like look at me strange, and I could tell they were judging me for not getting lettuce on it because they've already started putting the lettuce on. But it's like, I am getting the display.
The picture.
I'm getting it exactly like you're recommending it to me. But they're like, one time she chucked on it this giant handful of lettuce as I said no thank you. And then she was like, oh, is this all good then? And I was like, why would that be all good? Start again. Like, you've ruined the sandwich. You disobeyed the one order I gave you.
You deliberately disobeyed me.
And so, like the part of the, I also think that Subway is just like one of those things where like, it's the healthy option, but it's like, this is no different from.
It's not healthy. Don't fool yourself into thinking Subway's healthy.
Yeah.
I think that like, that I used to get shit from my friends for not wanting vegetables on my sub either. And the thing is, I just don't really like vegetables in sandwiches. Give it to me as a salad, I'll eat the whole thing. It's not that I don't want the vegetables, it's that I don't like
the mixing.
I don't like mixing it, yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
Richard, I really enjoyed like your description of that automatic kind of like, you know, the person behind the counter just automatically reaching in even as they ask you the question before you've answered, because it's just so they just expect it. Reminded me of the time that I walked up to like a like Shamiana Indian place in the mall, and they were like, "What would you like?" And as I started to talk, before I said anything, he just plunged the handle of the spoon into the butter chicken, like the mild butter chicken, like just on site looked at me being like, "Yep, you're gonna get a butter chicken." And I hadn't even said it, and I clocked that he had done it, and I was like, but that is what I want. So
that's the annoying thing. That like I love butter chicken, and I've had arguments with people that are like, "Oh, it's not curry, it doesn't count," and it's like, okay, I can still appreciate it as whatever food you think it is. I think it's great, but I also love other curries, and like. I change up my mall curry order every now and then, but it's like a butter chicken. The reason it's so popular is because it's so good. Give me a vindaloo, give me a madras, whatever. I can handle all of these. I enjoy all of these.
It's
but
just
I also
so creamy and sweet.
Yeah, it's also like the perfect like lunchtime one as well. But yeah, anyway, that is my very strong feelings about meatball subs from Subway, which I teased a year ago. There you go, Jake.